state that could make or break the election. Just think about that. Killer, thank you for the $5. Love your New York, or excuse me, I just said New York, North Carolina. I would travel from Kentucky if possible so fast to support you. You better friend me again on here and SC. It means a lot. I got to do that, Killer. I appreciate you bringing my attention to that. Yeah, it's nice to be out in North Carolina. Talise, thank you for the $20. I appreciate that. No message. And Megan, thank you for the $5. You're amazing. Get to see Obama tomorrow in Arizona. You will love it. He is such a great speaker. I'm so jealous that you're going to get to see him in person. Truly, it's fantastic. He's just such an amazing guy. So anyway, listen, if you're MAGA in the chat, let me know. I'll bring you up. And of course, drop a follow if you haven't already. Double tap the screen. Let's try to get to 200,000 likes. And of course, Venmo Cash App in the link in the bio. Are you in North Carolina or Chicago? I'm in North Carolina. North Carolina right now. I've never been to North Carolina. Never been to North Carolina. What did I say? Oh, did I say Chicago? Did I say Chicago? Okay, again, I'm running. Sorry, guys. I didn't mean to say Chicago. I meant to say North Carolina. I am running on 3.5 hours of sleep right now. So forgive me if I misspeak. It probably will happen again. Sleep deprivation, no good. No good. Anyway, if you're MAGA, let me know in the chat. I'll bring you up and we can talk. Sorry, I apologize about that. I didn't mean to say. I obviously did not mean to say Chicago. I haven't eaten or slept in a long time. But after this live, we're gonna go maybe film a YouTube video and order some food and go to bed. Man. What's up, Aaron?
Okay, so I have some questions. I did watch the debate on the interview. I'm wondering where Harris's question was going to be answered about immigration.
What?
Okay, so it looked like on Fox, I saw the Fox interview. So it looked like she didn't answer the question, and I was wondering if she had more policies for immigration.
Yeah, I mean, so what are you asking specifically regarding immigration? Just generally or a specific thing? Just generally? Yeah, she believes in a secure border. She wants to hire more Border Patrol agents to get that done. She wants to invest in state-of-the-art technology at the border to scan for drugs coming through, because that's actually where most drugs are brought through the border, legal ports of entry.
I do agree with that, because
she wants to. She wants to have more money to be able to prosecute drug traffickers and people who do illegal activity surrounding the border, whether it be trafficking of any kind. She also wants to expand immigration courts so we can address asylum claims quicker. She wants to, as part of her hiring of a bunch of Border Patrol agents, wants to hire agents specifically to deal with drugs and specifically to deal with asylum seekers. She also wants to give the president the ability and the Border Patrol the ability to shut down the border if it becomes overwhelmed, so that they can make that judgment if a certain threshold is hit. At one point, it's optional, so it's around at 4,000 on a weekly rolling basis. It's optional when it hits 5,000 on a weekly rolling basis. That is apprehensions at the border. It automatically shuts down. And yeah, those are just some things that she wants to do. I know it's kind of like scrambled.
Okay, so now I noticed something about the Obama administration, the Donald Trump administration, and Biden's administration. I'm wondering if it's going to be continuous with each administration.
I don't think so. I mean,
on something about gas prices.
Well, on gas prices?
I work for DoorDash for a living.
Yeah.
So I see gas going up, down, like a human yo-yo.
Yeah. So what's your question? Is like, what is she going to do about gas prices?
Yes, because I got a lot of friends that do DoorDash as like I do.
Yeah. So there's no real way for the president of the United States themselves to bring down gas prices. But of course, Kamala Harris understands like the strain that high prices are having on your average American and Americans who are working hard every single day like yourself. She wants to bring down costs in a number of ways. That includes energy. What she wants to do there is, while she can't bring down gas prices herself, she wants to invest in like renewable energy, which gives the United States another massive energy source to fuel the day-to-day lives of people like yourself. She also wants to bring down costs in other ways that the president may actually have control over with the help of Congress, like continuing to lower healthcare costs, specifically drugs that Medicare is able to negotiate with private companies, capping costs of certain drugs. Like right now, there's a $35 cap on insulin for seniors on Medicare. She wants to make that apply to every single American. And things of that nature. And of course, she's looking at people like yourself. She's saying, you're a hardworking American, you're middle class. Let's give you a tax cut, right? It's enough. We've had enough of the rich people getting the tax cut and then hoping it comes down to us. That's what Donald Trump's theory is. Kamala Harris is saying, folks like yourself, we need to give you a tax cut. Your taxes will not be raised in a Kamala Harris administration. and you'll actually hopefully get some tax cuts as well, which will, of course, help in your day-to-day life as well. So.
And now I've got another question. This will explain why I'm voting for Trump unless I can find evidence that the lobstering industry in Maine is not going to be killed off by Democrats.
What industry?
Most of my family lobstermen. There's been a lot of Democratic bylaws up here in Maine trying to cancel them. So I'm wondering if Harris is going to do something about that.
When you say lumpster?
Lobstering, yes. Lobstering.
What is that?
You get on a boat, you pull up a
lobster.
I have a speech impediment, so.
Oh, no, that's my bad. I'm sorry. This microphone is different than the one I normally hear, so I can hear myself and you. It's just hard. Anyway, apologies. Lobster. Yeah, no, I don't. Kamala Harris doesn't have any policy of trying to, stop your family from continuing their industry. Lobster rolls are great.
Gotta try them fresh. Come to Maine, try them fresh.
I got to try them fresh at some point. I've heard amazing things about Maine lobster rolls, so I got to try it at some point.
And there's one other thing. I know that during COVID-19, this is a question I have. It's about the COVID tests. You know how they were produced in massive production, right?
Yeah.
I personally know that Donald Trump came to Guilford, Maine, because I delivered some stuff for the company Puritan. And I actually met him. So I was wondering if Biden came up to Maine and tried to campaign by going to Puritan.
Did Biden come campaigning? I don't know. I don't have like a specific. I don't have a specific memory of Biden doing that. I'm sure that President Biden has visited Maine during his presidency. I think he did in the aftermath of that mass shooting that took place. But I'm not. Don't quote me on that.
We won't talk about Lincoln. We won't talk about Lewiston. Not a good town.
Yeah. Okay.
The whole area is not actually, to be honest.
I don't know anything about it. I don't live in Maine, so I couldn't tell you.
Oh, trust me, I hear enough of it. So, but pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, likewise, man. I appreciate it. And think about your vote for me, all right?
Yep.
All right, Aaron. Have a good one. I appreciate it.
So, bye.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. I don't know anything. I've never been to Maine. I've been to a couple states recently I've never been to. Kelsey, thank you for the $5. Love when you go live. I appreciate that, Kelsey. Thank you so much for being here. Christina, thank you for the $25, saying from one teacher to another. Oh, God. Luke, putting me in the group of teachers is an honor. I mean, teachers are heroes, man. So Christina, you're a hero for being a teacher. You deserve way more, and you deserve our appreciation. Thank you for educating the masses. Thank you for educating the masses as well, Christina. You're doing amazing work. I hope you know that. Genuinely very, very important work. Sierra, thank you for the $1. Little blue dot in Indiana that voted early for Kamala today. Hoping I also voted for our first Democratic woman governor, Jennifer McCormick. I was excited to tell you. Sierra, that's amazing. I'm so glad you got out and voted today. Early voting is great. You're doing your part. You're making your voice heard. And that's all that can be asked of you. Thank you so much for doing your civic duty, and thank you for telling me that. I'm glad. I always love hearing about people voting. It's my favorite. Talise, thank you for the $5. I hit the button too quick. Keep up the good work. I appreciate that so much. Thank you, and I appreciate the follow up as well. Want to make sure that I'm responding to everybody that's Venmo, Cash App. You are amazing. All right, if you're MAGA, let me know in the chat. I'll bring you up and we can talk. All right, let's bring up Oliver. I think he was typing MAGA in the chat. Let's give him a shot. North Carolina live stream, first live stream. That's North Carolina. All right, man. How old are you?
I'm 19. What's up,
all right, why are you MAGA? Oh, what's up, man? Sorry.
I'm good. I'm not necessarily, I'm not super Trump, just a Republican. I'd say mostly it's because of economy. I'm a finance student. I kind of care more about the economy than the social issues.
Yeah, but why would that lead you to support Donald Trump? We can't hear you when you're off TikTok Live. You got to come back.
See, obviously his past performance. I don't know. Last administration's accomplishments, the 7 million new jobs, 3.5% unemployment rate. I mean, obviously, I think we can both agree we're really good for that time.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple comments here that off the top of my head. So Biden has had higher job growth, and the natural response is, well, because of COVID. But even if you factor out job growth, on average, the Biden administration's job growth per month without COVID jobs is better than the Trump administration. And funnily enough, we also had lower unemployment under Biden at 3.4% than we did under Donald Trump at 3.5%. But also, you make a point that I hear a lot, which is, well, we were good under Donald Trump. And, I think that's a reason to vote for him. I disagree, because we have to ask, like, why? Why were we good under Donald Trump? Why was the economy doing well? And it had nothing to do with Donald Trump at the end of the day. He didn't actually influence the economy in a way that made it better. He just inherited Obama's economy. Obama had the longest stretch of positive job growth. And then Donald Trump comes into the Oval Office and says, I did that. It's like, well, no, you don't really get to take credit for other people's work. So in reality, Trump didn't really do anything to help me or help you or help the economy. It was more so him just taking credit for other people's work.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that. But, Trump did bring supply chain and industry back to America, which was one of the biggest things that increased job growth. I know if you saw how much he brought jobs back to the U.S., well, I think it was 1.2 million industry jobs he brought back, as well as a $1.5 billion investment into agriculture, which brought agriculture back.
I don't know. I'm not 100% sure where you're getting those numbers from, but what I do know is that Donald Trump actually outsourced more jobs than Obama did. So It was over his 4 years compared to Obama's last, because we can't compare 8 years of Trump, obviously, because he lost. But Obama's 4 years, his last term, and Trump's first term, Trump actually outsourced more jobs. So I also disagree with that. And also, it's important to note that, like, a bunch of economists and really respected financial institutions are coming out and talking about how terrible Trump's economic policies would be. Like, we have Penn Wharton, or amazing school, amazing business school. We have Goldman Sachs, a bunch of different financial institutions saying that, yeah, Trump's policies would actually hurt your average American, like raise their taxes and add a lot to the deficit. And I don't think that's a recipe for success.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. You asked about where am I getting my sources. It's
yes,
White House Archives. Just for,
so
if you want to go back and reference that. Yeah, that's White House Archives.
Yeah.
But I'll go with what you were saying about Goldman Sachs and Penn Wharton. Those are big institutions, obviously, and they always follow financial theory. I think theirs is mainly Keynesian. And when you follow financial theory, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think you remember, you may have studied it, the economic collapse of 2008 that destroyed our real estate sector. Mm-hmm. That was followed by Alan Greenspan, who believed in that same economic theory that Goldman Sachs was pressing. So, there's different times where economic theory helps and it hurts the U.S. economy. And so at the end of the day, these propositions and, what they're looking at, these numbers on how the policy would work, it's all just an estimation based on theory.
Absolutely.
So in turn, it could be incredible. And on the other end, their predictions could be completely off. So I don't really take the predictions of economic theory into account when I'm voting, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm not sure if that's valid. I think, like, if we have some of the best economists in the world saying, like, yeah, we are of the belief that, increasing tariffs across the board 10 to 20% would be incredibly inflationary, which history proves that as well, then we should probably listen to those folks. I mean, these are not just like, schmucks who are walking around and, making just projections. These are really, really qualified people. So I don't know. I think it's important.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm just saying, but overall, when you look at the previous performances compared to the current administration, I just believe that Trump has had a better economy. And I think you can also probably agree that there were definitely some parts that were better. I think one of the biggest things that really hurt this economy, or really hurt this administration, you saw the gas prices. And I know you just told your last guy that, Kamala has nothing to do with gas prices. And obviously, it's more of a Biden thing. But the Keystone Pipeline was, a major influx on that gas prices.
Really? Because the Keystone XL pipeline wasn't even in operation when it was canceled. It was only 8% complete.
Yeah,
so it actually wasn't.
That would have helped with the gas prices, as well as jobs that were lost during that too.
Not really.
Tell me that doesn't affect the economy.
No, not really. There weren't that many permanent jobs that were associated with it. There were construction jobs, but in terms of it being completed, there was only a handful of jobs in each state for management of the pipeline. And again, it was only 8% complete. And it was also only going to help one Canadian oil company. They wanted to bring their oil down from Canada through the United States to the Gulf of Mexico so that they could refine it and sell it abroad. That oil was not for the United States. It was just so that this company can make a profit. And it also wasn't really canceled by Biden. It was already facing legal challenges, and some of its permits were canceled as a result of lawsuits that were brought by native tribes. So there's no reason to believe that it would have had a massive impact on gas prices, and that canceling it did either.
Yeah. And another question, what is your big thing about Kamala? Why do you vote Kamala?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a positive argument for Kamala Harris and a negative argument for Trump in this. Kamala Harris is a dedicated public servant, was district attorney, attorney general. In these roles, she prosecuted killers, assaulters, traffickers, and then as attorney general, she went after fraudulent colleges, banks in '08 that scammed people, fossil fuel companies that were improperly polluting rivers and things like that. And now then she was senator and vice president, so she's really qualified and has been doing this for a long time. But she's also like a good person morally, I think has the necessary leadership qualities to be president of the United States, and she has good policy. And then in turn, you look to the other side and you have Donald Trump, who is a convicted felon, a proven sexual abuser in court, a proven business fraudster in court. This is somebody who tried to overturn the 2020 election when he didn't win it, and he knew he didn't win it. And I don't think that somebody that has those kind of qualities should be president again.
Okay, you hear that, the 34 counts or whatever.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's still an appeal process, so I don't really want to talk too much about that. I think one of the biggest things is, what does Kamala have to benefit off of a presidency versus Trump? Trump's a successful businessman. He's a billionaire. Why do you think that he's running for president if, he has no ulterior motive?
No, he definitely has an ulterior motive. It's to keep himself out of prison. That's, I mean,
the only reason out of prison. That's your belief that Trump's running for president?
100%. The only reason that Donald Trump is running for president right now is so that he could either pardon himself or at least avoid criminal charges for 4 years and like probably get them dropped by having the Department of Justice dismissing them under him. I mean, he's like, he's staring down the barrel of like 600 plus years in prison if he's convicted and sent to the maximum of all charges, which wouldn't happen, but that's the maximum. And so the only way he avoids that is by becoming president of the United States. So he's running this like phony campaign where he doesn't really have any policy. He's not really articulating what he believes. He's just like hoping to really like give really vague statements in hopes that people will vote for him. So he says stuff like, I'm going to lower your gas prices. I'm going to lower housing. I'm going to lower inflation. And then you say, well, how are you going to do that? He doesn't have an answer. But yeah, he's doing all this to keep himself out of jail. Absolutely.
So you're being 100% honest. You genuinely believe that Trump is only running to get out of prison?
100%. Donald Trump is like this narcissistic maniac. The thought of prison like terrifies him. And, if, as I mentioned, if he were convicted of these crimes and even sent to like 20 to 30 years in prison, he would die in prison. Right. So, I definitely think it's because of that.
Considering none of these crimes are violent, his chance of actually going to prison are extremely low.
I disagree.
You believe that he'd go to prison over this?
Yeah. I mean, it's like the classified document crimes he was, indicted for example, are really serious. They carry a maximum of like some of them 20 plus years in prison. And we see people all the time who have leaked American secrets or stolen classified documents knowingly, and they go to jail for a really long time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think you might be kind of delusional if you think that he's actually going to go to prison for a while, especially considering the appeal process and the amount of evidence. But I won't get into the cases. Well, I wanted to talk more about the border.
Yeah, we can talk about that in a second. But the point is that if you're convicted of, it doesn't have to be nonviolent. If you're convicted of multiple crimes and like you have 4 different cases, and let's just say he's convicted in all these cases, some of these cases involve like defrauding the American people or RICO in Georgia or, knowingly stealing classified secrets of the United States of America. And when you factor all these crimes, yeah, you're going to go to jail. I mean, like anybody else that commits these crimes goes to jail. And I think that in a justice system that's reasonable and fair, there'd be no other expectation other than, Trump should face the exact same consequence that you or I would face if we committed those crimes.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, didn't they just say that Biden had documents in his house too? Was that not long ago?
Yeah. So there has been multiple people in U.S. history we'll just focus on modern American history who have had classified documents, like Mike Pence, Donald Trump's former vice president, had a classified document, or classified documents in his house. He wasn't charged. Joe Biden, similar story, was not charged. Why? Because in order to charge somebody with these crimes, you have to prove that they knowingly took the classified documents. And there wasn't evidence that Mike Pence or Joe Biden did that. But with Donald Trump, there is. I mean, he's on audio saying that he took classified documents when he knew he shouldn't, and that they're still classified. He could have declassified them, but he didn't. So.
Okay, so you acknowledge that there's been other people in history that have had classified documents and haven't faced criminal time.
Yeah, I mean, but again, the nuance is important.
All right, yeah, so I understand. I wanted to talk a little bit about the border.
Sure.
I know, I was really questioning, what you think Kamala has done that is better than Donald Trump's administration with the border.
Well, Trump didn't do anything for the border. He didn't pass any major immigration reform. He didn't really.
You're not talking about the stay in Mexico.
Yeah, Remain in Mexico only affected around 70,000 people and wasn't even really in effect by the end of the Trump administration. And like, for example,
that would have prevented the death of Laken Riley and the two other individuals. Would
not necessarily. It only applied to 70,000 people. I mean, it wasn't like every single person who tried to come to the United States had Remain in Mexico applied to them. It was like a very specific program that has a lot of legal issues. It's like, can we even do that? Is an entirely separate question. But Laken Riley's death and the death of other people would probably be prevented if Republicans would have stopped blocking the bipartisan immigration bill that
Those
Kamala
deaths
Harris
had already happened before the bipartisan bill.
I'm just speaking generally.
Okay. Yeah, but the bipartisan bill wasn't just blocked strictly because of the immigration policy.
Yes, it was.
I know y'all like to talk about, it was so Trump had a better election look, with the immigration, but there was a lot of extra wordage. I think, neither you or I have completely read that entire document. There's no way for us to say. That's what I'm saying. That's what I heard was the main reason for the blockage was that there's allocation of funding. How most of those documents don't get passed. I think we can both agree that a lot of reasons that documents don't get passed is because of funding allocation.
So that's the obvious excuse that Republicans came up with. They obviously have to say something to people like yourself who are Republicans to justify it, and they're going to give again very vague statements as to. One second, I'm not done yet. One sec. I'll happy to address that. But they have to make like very vague statements to you of like, there's funding, misappropriation or something like that in the bill. Like, that's why we didn't vote for it. When obviously it's because they don't want reform on immigration. They're not even entertaining the bill. Like within 5 minutes of the bill being released, Steve Scalise, who's the whip in the House, and Mike Johnson, who's the Republican Speaker of the House, said that the bill would not be brought to a vote. They didn't even read it. It was within 5 minutes of a 300-plus page bill being written. And again, it was written by Democrats and Republicans. Now, you mentioned Democrats who voted against it. Yeah, there's difference of opinion in the Democratic Party on immigration. There are some Democrats who are more lenient. There are some Democrats who are more stringent. There is difference of opinion in the Democratic Party, but it doesn't change the fact that the overwhelming majority of the Democrats voted for it. It was written by Republicans, and Republicans still blocked that bill. So you can't say, these deaths would have been prevented and try to put it on the Democrats if it's the Republicans standing in the way of immigration reform right now.
But the immigration reform had already happened with the Stay in Mexico reform. That would have stopped. Yeah, it would have stopped deaths from occurring.
Yeah, that's so ridiculous, man. Because again, Remain in Mexico only applied to 70,000 people under the Trump administration, so it wasn't far-reaching. It wasn't like everybody that comes in.
Where's the 70,000?
The federal government. I can show you a graph. Are you okay?
Awesome.
Are you gonna be a child, man?
I'd love to see that. No, I'm kidding.
Don't pull that stuff, man. Yeah. So here we go. Here's a graph for you. This is from the American Immigration Council talking about Title VIII Remain in Mexico. And I'll flip it for you. And it shows you that by the end of the Trump administration, the dark blue is Remain in Mexico.
I'm sorry, I can't really see the graph.
Hold on. It's like glitching. So the dark blue is Remain in Mexico. Normal processing was still taking place. So for you saying like, if Remain in Mexico was in place, the deaths would not have taken place is just completely misinformed on what Remain in Mexico actually was and what authority the government actually has.
So with the Laken Riley case, though, that individual would have been would have fallen under the Remain in Mexico.
Maybe. I mean, it's like hard to say. It's hard to say.
But it would have. That was.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Because that was the topic of the discussion at the Kamala interview, 2 days ago?
I don't know. That doesn't answer my question. Like, why do you say it would absolutely 100% been prevented if Remain in Mexico would have stayed in place? Because we already see that Remain in Mexico is only applying to a very small amount of people.
I'm not exactly sure. I was just following with what is his name? Dean Baird or Baer?
Brett Baer.
Brett Baer. I have no idea. I don't even really follow him that much. But apparently that was the topic of conversation in that.
Wait, you're telling me that Fox News is dishonest in their questioning? I'm shocked.
All right. But, another thing, the border. I know you also said that only 50 miles were built. 400 miles were built. I did a little fact checking on you in there. And the reason the wall was built, I know you said that, the whole seeking asylum, but the reason was the wall was built and, factual from the last case per, White House archives, 87%, or the border crossings at wall sites where the wall had been built were down 87%. So I feel like that, that's facts.
I think you need to look a little bit more into the border statistics, because what I said was 50 miles of new wall were built. There was 450 miles total, but 400 miles of the 450 were already existing structures that were reinforced. So there's already fence there. And so there was 50 new miles that were built. And the way that Donald Trump got that money for the building of the wall was he took money from the Pentagon. He took money from our national defense to fund his little project, and he only built 50 miles of new wall and reinforced the already existing 400 plus miles. He didn't even reinforce all the wall that's already there. And of course, crossings at borders are lower. It's like those structures were already existing. So that's a completely misleading statistic. But anyway, it doesn't matter. You can look this up as well.
I mean, down 80. What would you say?
I said you should look this up as well. That the new what wall was actually reinforced and what wall was new.
I'll trust your judgment there. I'm just saying that 400 miles were built. Not just you just said 50, which I mean that may be a fact, but that's not actually what I said.
I said that's not what I said. I said 50 miles of new wall. That's what I said.
I did not hear the new part.
Well, you're hearing it now. 50 miles of new wall.
All right, I understand. My other question, with the Ukraine and Hamas stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm curious if you believe, economically, if that's a reasonable use of funds.
100%. I mean, well, I think the Middle East, they're two different conflicts. So this answer doesn't apply to both of them, but especially Ukraine, 100%, that's a great use of funds. Now the Middle East is more up for debate because it's very tragic what's happening. But when it comes to Ukraine, 100% we should be funding Ukraine. It's one of the best investments that we can make in foreign policy right now. Easily.
I think Ukraine might be the one where I disagree the most. Ukraine is not a part of NATO. They don't contribute. Yeah, we have dumped I'll just say between them and Israel since 2022. The U.S. has funded has approved funding of $175 billion. And, I'm not, this might be a new statistic for you, but $53 billion would be enough to cover homelessness in America, as well as end world hunger. So I'm just saying, do you really think it's that big of a deal to support a war in Ukraine rather than call for ceasefire or, support Israel when you could stop massive social issues like that?
So the X amount of money can solve homelessness is always a really interesting conversation, because it's that data I would also argue is very misleading. It's okay, that amount of money would solve world hunger. It's if that were really the case, this would be an issue that's already solved now. If we could just throw billions of dollars at it, it would be done. But obviously solving world hunger is a far more complex issue than just throwing money at it. So I disagree with that framing. But in terms of Ukraine, we do support peace. We do want an end to the war, and that could happen right now. The war can end right now if Putin just takes his troops out of Ukraine and stops invading the country illegally. But for now, Ukraine is an ally of ours. We have an agreement with them stretching back to the 1990s. The Budapest Accord, which is an agreement we made saying, hey, if you give up your nuclear weapons, we'll protect you if Russia invades. And it's really important that we honor that agreement, because we have to be a reliable partner on the world stage. But also, it's just a good investment generally. Because of the United States, we've been able to, or Ukraine has been able to, wipe out 50% of Russia's original army and taken out their ships, their planes, certain strategic positions they have. I mean, that helps the United States. Russia getting weaker helps us. And not a single American soldier has had to die doing it. We've spent trillions of dollars combating Russia and trying to combat their influence since the Cold War. And now we have to spend 130 billion, and we've wiped out 50% of their original army. That sounds like a great idea and a great investment to me. I see no negatives.
I do see negatives. I mean, is that not just warmongering, that when money can be spent here in America with infrastructure repairs and, like I said, world hunger, any of those other issues that could further benefit the American taxpayer? Well, instead, we're paying money to taxes to see money that, will never benefit us.
Well, I would argue it very much benefits us. Russia getting weaker very much helps the United States. But also, it's important to note that we're not sending money. We're sending the majority of what we're sending is weapons in our reserves. So these $900,000 taxpayer funded missiles that are sitting on our reserves, you send them to, a family that's hungry. They're not going to do anything with that. So this missile has already been built, has already been in our reserves. So giving that missile to Ukraine to use against Russia is a pretty good investment. And also, it's important to note that we appropriate money for domestic funding and foreign funding every single year. So the money that we're talking about right now in terms of Ukraine funding is going to be spent no matter what. It's going to be spent no matter what. So it's just a matter of what it gets spent on in terms of foreign policy funding. And I think funding Ukraine and making Russia weak and investing in American industry while doing it, there's truly no negative.
No, I'm saying, my talking point was I believe that, there shouldn't be as much spending foreign when we have this many issues in the U.S. I know there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be repaired in the United States. I think it was 1.3 trillion would be the total estimate to fix the U.S., to update the U.S. infrastructure, which is a lot higher than that 175 billion. But, certain money should go towards the American infrastructure.
We can do both. Biden
please,
passed a 1.3. Biden quite literally passed a $1.3 trillion infrastructure bill that invests in new roads and bridges, has $350 billion for new roads and bridges over the next 5 years. It removes every single lead pipe in America so everybody has clean drinking water. It weatherizes our electrical grids and things like that. And during the Biden administration, we've been able to support Ukraine. And I just want you to put this in a historical perspective, right? If you put yourself back in World War II, which I think is an interesting thought experiment, you would be of the view that we shouldn't be supporting Great Britain because we could be spending that money on ourselves. This was before the United States entered the war. We were sending them weapons, we were sending them food and things like that to help combat Germany. But you would be of the view, if you applied that time, that
I'm not saying that entirely we should have been out of it. I do believe we should be sending extra weapons, but we weren't entirely rooting. We weren't spending too much taxpayer money over to Britain. We were spending a decent amount for our time. We were spending a decent amount for our time. Yeah, we were spending a decent amount, but there was a reason that you just stayed completely uninvolved, and we still had great economy at the time in the U.S. The economy has not been what it has.
Well, the economy is great right now, and obviously there's a lot of people still struggling with prices, but by every other metric, the economy is booming right now. But even if the economy is not where it could be, it doesn't mean that we should allow our ally to be invaded by Russia and have hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of innocent people die and Russia gets stronger. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We're the United States. We're the richest, most powerful country in the world. We can invest in our people, which we do. 99% of our funding goes to domestic things in the United States, and we can combat our enemies around the world. I think combating Russia and their desire to grow influence is a good investment.
So you think that would be a better investment than just saying, let's say, trying to, start peace in Ukraine? Well, that's my biggest thing is, why are we facilitating war when we could be, encouraging peace?
We have.
There's been not as much as we could have been. Do you think Ukraine would have never invaded under Trump? Russia would have never invaded Ukraine. Okay.
That's not true.
Did they?
No.
Were any new wars started under Trump?
Well, there was war that was started under Trump globally, but not war involving the United States. It's also important to note that we, the United States, are actually directly involved in less war right now than we were under Donald Trump. And there was
if you count the withdrawals.
Yeah, well, exactly. This is for the first time in this century, the United States is not at war. For the first time in my life that you and I have been alive, the United States is not at war under Joe Biden. And there was plenty of conflict going on in the Middle East. There was a lot of war going on. The Syrian civil war was still going on. The United States had an interest in that, as did Russia, as did other bunch of countries. So there was not, the idea that there was peace under Donald Trump is not true. And the idea that Russia would not have invaded under Donald Trump because he's so big and scary, I also think is preposterous.
I'm not saying that we can never go back in the past and flip a coin and see what would happen. I'm just saying there was no new wars under Donald Trump, and under Joe Biden there's been 2 or 3.
Yeah, I just don't think that a war starting in an entirely different country just when somebody is president means that they bear any responsibility. I always use this as well. You wouldn't say that Woodrow Wilson is responsible for World War I. You wouldn't say that FDR is responsible for World War II. However, these wars started under these presidents, right? That would be a silly argument to make. Just like it's silly to insinuate or argue that Joe Biden bears any responsibility for Russia being stupid and, different groups in the Middle East being stupid.
Yeah, I think it's more involvement that creates more of a war. You see, Obama was a warmonger.
How is Obama a warmonger, but Trump isn't?
Well, Obama his whole campaign was based on peace, and he had some of the most new wars under him.
I don't know where that statistic is, but what I do know is that Donald Trump increased the drone strikes from Obama. So if you think that Obama is a warmonger, you would also have to argue that Trump is a warmonger.
But Trump didn't start any new wars. so therefore he's not a warmonger.
Wait, so if Donald Trump is like droning the shit out of the Middle East and just dropping bombs every single day on innocent people, then, but he didn't start a new war, quote unquote, that means he's not a warmonger. But if you start a new war, then you're a warmonger.
Okay, wait. So
Also,
where are you
what
getting
war
this
did
information
Obama
that he
start?
drone strike the shit out of the Middle East?
Yeah, Trump increased the drone strikes 450% on the Middle East.
Okay, where did he kill innocent people?
Yeah, 1 second, let me pull it up for you.
Here, yeah, I'd love to see that statistic.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a Chicago Sun-Times article. Under Donald Trump, drone strikes far exceed Obama's numbers, and of course, there's a fucking paywall.
Yeah. So where's the casualties?
Yeah, I have it for you here. Trump revokes Obama rule on reporting drone strikes. Donald Trump has revoked a policy set by his predecessor requiring U.S. intelligence officials to publish numbers of civilians killed in drone strikes outside of war zones. I think the numbers are in here. There have been 2,243 drone strikes in the first 2 years of Trump's presidency, compared with 1,878 in Mr. Obama's 8 years in office. So a really substantial increase. An uptick in deaths. This is by the BBC, by the way. Human rights activists complained about the drone program under Obama, saying the operations were overly secretive and hid the fact that civilians were sometimes killed in the strikes. During Mr. Obama's 8 years in office, 1,000 yada yada drone strikes were carried out. Under Trump, there are more drone strikes and less transparency. I'm trying to find the number in this article. I don't even know if they have the number in this article, but we do have the number, at least an increase in drone strikes. Actually, I have an article for you on Afghanistan innocent deaths. 1 sec. Afghanistan. The number went up 330% under Donald Trump. Innocent civilian deaths in Afghanistan. Yeah, so here's an article from BBC. Civilians killed in airstrikes in Afghanistan soars by more than 300%. In 2019 alone, around 700 civilians were killed. The Cost of War project at Brown University says it's the highest figure since the first years of the U.S.-led offensive following the 9/11 attacks in 2001.
I'm sorry, who was that by?
This is the BBC. It's called Civilians Killed in Airstrikes in Afghanistan Soars by More Than 300%. And they're citing the Cost of War project at Brown University.
Okay, and what are the years they did on that?
Well, obviously under the Trump administration. It says in 2019 alone, around 700 civilians were killed. The Cost of War project at Brown University says it's the highest figure since the first years of the U.S.-led offensive following the 9/11 attacks in 2001. So they're citing, it looks like 2019 and parts of 2020. In the first 6 months of 2020, 86 civilians were killed and 103 injured in airstrikes.
And that's in which country again? I'm sorry, Afghanistan?
Afghanistan, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how positive I am of that statistic.
I mean, it's from the BBC. It's like a really, obviously very reliable outlet.
Yeah, no, I'd like to see that one. I'll probably research that one after this, but I have not seen anything along that line.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
I don't know. Is there anything else that?
No, I think unless you have anything further, we can leave it there.
Yeah, I think we're good. It was a pleasure debating with you, Harry.
Yeah, man. All right, I appreciate it. You have a good rest of your night. All right.
You too.
Thanks. God, I'm so tired. Jessica, thank you for the $5. Remind guests that Trump lost more U.S. soldiers than Biden. That's always a good stat to combat the whole like Trump is so scary thing. It's like, and the really sad thing is that Trump never even like acknowledges these 65 soldiers. Like he just pretends that they don't exist. Like it's really sad because Trump will always bring up the 13 American soldiers who died in Afghanistan, which is obviously tragic. Like we all agree that those people are heroes, right? But he just never mentions the 65 that died under him. Because it makes him look bad. He doesn't care about those people. It's crazy. Alexander, thank you for the $10. I have questions I would love for you to help me finding info. Thanks. Yeah, absolutely, Alexander. We can make that happen. Avneet, thank you for the $1. What do you think about Vivek Ramaswamy? Awful person. Terrible. Caroline, thank you for the $5. Voting early in North Carolina tomorrow. Hope you have a good time here. Caroline, oh, I love you, Caroline. You're so amazing. Please get out and vote. Bring your fans, family, loved ones. Go vote early, especially in the swing states. Go vote early. Go vote early. Go vote early, please. Caroline is doing amazing work. She's doing it. I love it. Ryan, thank you for the $1. I know you and OM have beefed in the past and was wondering if you've seen him getting demolished by Destiny in Twitter Spaces. It's embarrassing. I have not. I gotta see that. Is there like a link to that or something? Minecraft, thank you for the $15. Yo, Harris Walls 2024. I was able to convince 2 Jill Stein voters to vote for Harris. I showed them your videos about dangers of letting Trump win through third party. Small favor, could you let the viewers know the dangers of voting third party? Yeah. Like, here's the thing. First of all, Minecraft, good work, man. You're doing great work. I appreciate the $15. Here's the thing. The votes that Jill Stein got in 2016 in these major swing states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, if those people would have voted for Hillary Clinton, they would have won, or she would have won. Hillary Clinton would have beat Donald Trump, and we wouldn't be talking about all this crap right now. But these people voted for Jill Stein. Jill Stein has never done anything. She's never held office. She's never passed any policy. She's never done anything. She's a complete fraud. And every 4 years, she just shows up to run for president and says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. She's never been elected to like a local government position, a state senate, Congress, nothing. She just sits there and runs every 4 years. It's so frustrating. Anyway, as you can tell, Alex, thank you for the $1. Michigan here. Convinced my coworker to vote for Harris. Oh my God. I love you guys. Like, I love hearing stuff like this. Like, truly, this is so amazing, the work you guys are doing. Good work. Good work, Alex, and good work to everybody who's convincing people. Listen, make sure to drop a follow if you haven't already. We do these lives all the time. We're live right now from the great state of North Carolina. And make sure to double tap the screen if you haven't already. Continue to double tap the screen. Let's try to get to 400,000 likes, and share the live and things like that. And of course, the Venmo and the Cash App are in the link in the bio if you want to support the live. Look at, let's see if you're anyway. And aside from all that, let me know if you're MAGA in the chat. We will bring you up and we can talk. And you can tell me why on earth you're MAGA. How on earth you're MAGA? What the hell are you doing? What are you doing? God. Anyway, if you're MAGA, let me know in the chat. Sorry. My terrible setup is failing again. Because again, we're in the middle. We're in Lily. Let's bring up Lily or give her an invite. Trump says Kyle Greenberg. We'll give him an invite. Get out there and vote. If you got your ballot, go vote when the time comes. Yeah, absolutely. Please go vote. Crystal, let's give Crystal an invite. Here she comes. She says she's MAGA. Why? Why on earth would you do that to yourself? Why would you do that to the people around you? Crystal, hello?
Hello, Harry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Why are you MAGA?
I'm not. I'm so sorry I lied.
Oh, okay.
Harris 2024.
What'd you say?
Harris 2024. I love you. I'm voting in Virginia, but Southwest Virginia.
Fuck yeah.
Love you.
Fuck yeah. Crystal, I appreciate you. Get out there and vote if you have. What are you early voting? Yeah.
No, I'm gonna go on the date.
Okay. Just make sure you do it. All right. Get out there. First thing you do when you wake up is go vote. All right.
100%.
Oh, Crystal, you're amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you. Crystal, voting in Virginia, voting in the great state of Virginia. Please get out and vote. Please. It takes no time. It takes no time. If you are MAGA, well, but if you're a Harris Wall supporter, get out and vote. Get out and vote. Get out and vote. Everybody should vote. Everybody, like genuinely, everybody should vote. You should make your voices heard. But, if you're a Harris Walls supporter, get out and vote. Get out and vote. Anyway, all right. If you're MAGA, let me know in the chat. I'll bring you up and we can talk. Where's this one guy? I think Johnny wanted to come up earlier. We'll try to get him up here. MAGA can go. Oh, yeah. MAGA can go on January 5th. Yeah. Donald Trump said that Election Day is January 5th. So he said everybody get out and vote on January 5th. Look at Cora. Cora says, MAGA, don't vote. God will take care of it. It's honestly, Cora, it sounds exactly like something Donald Trump would say. Like, oh yeah, don't worry. Like, golly. Let's bring up Courtney. Is that Courtney's name? I just sent her an invite. I'm sending a bunch of people an invite, by the way. I don't know if they're just choosing not to come up. Is Nate requesting up? Nate keeps spamming MAGA. He's not in the box. He's not in the box. He's not in the box. Oh. He's not in the box. Big Sky Aviation. Okay. All right. Oh, look at this. I hope you get to meet Bill Clinton in North Carolina. I know he's here campaigning. I would love to meet President Clinton. Hello?
Hey, man. What's up?
Not much, man. Are you MAGA?
I sure am.
Why on earth?
So just how I was raised, I've lived, I'm first off, I'm 22, so I voted in 2020. I voted for Trump in 2020. That was my first ever,
Yeah.
first one. And then now I actually just voted for Trump.
You already voted for Trump?
Yes.
What state are you voting in?
Montana.
Who'd you vote for Senate?
Sheehy.
Of course you did. You fucking... Okay. Well, I guess there's no point in having this conversation if you've already voted.
Well, I mean, there's some things about Trump that I don't like. There's some things about Sheehy I don't like. I'm really not like hardcore like MAGA. Like I'm not like,
It doesn't matter. You made the decision that a loyalty to a man is more important than things like democracy. And I always just find it, I don't know what the word is, interesting when people tell me that, I was just because of the way I was raised, I support Donald Trump. Just like, tell me, did your parents raise you to assault women? Did your parents raise you to make fun of women or talk about their weight, their appearance, their age? Did your parents raise you to tell women that they're lying when they accuse somebody of assault? Did your parents raise you to do that?
Nah. So what I'm saying,
So how are you the way you're raising? I mean, how can you invoke that and say that's the reason you're voting for Donald Trump, my man?
what I'm saying is that the way I was raised. So I'm a Christian. All right. I'm along like
You voted for Trump, the guy that cheated on all three of his wives. You know that, right? He cheated on all three of his wives. And when he cheated with Stormy Daniels, the adult actress, his wife was at home taking care of his newborn baby. That's the guy you voted for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's also found, and the reason I was asking you, are you raised to do any of those things, is that Trump did all of those things. He assaults women. He makes fun of women. He brags about assaulting women. I just don't know how that, led to you to, I don't know how you could be raised in such a way that makes you think that that's okay, unless you're being raised by Donald Trump himself.
I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm saying that he's the better person to basically run the country.
Let me ask you this.
He's been proven that he can run the country because between 2016 and 2020, America was amazing. I mean, I'm not saying America's not great right now, but America could be better.
So in 2016, America was amazing?
Yeah.
You said 2016 to 2020. So 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, America was amazing?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for agreeing that America was amazing under President Obama in 2016 because Donald Trump wasn't president yet. He didn't take the office until 2017. And you think that America was great in 2020 when you couldn't go to the grocery store and buy paper towels? You had to wait in line?
That's not his fault. That's not his fault for that whole thing to start. He didn't start the virus.
I'm not saying he did, but his response is his fault, right?
Well, it did kind of sound like it was his fault for starting the whole virus. That's kind of that's why I'm saying, because it's not his fault. We didn't know that this was going to happen. This was not planned. It just happened, and it blew up. It's how life works.
But the problem is that is that his response to the pandemic was god awful. It was terrible. His own medical advisor said that because of his response, hundreds of thousands of people died unnecessarily. His own medical advisor, Dr. Deborah Birx. So, that is not that's not just a fact of life, right? Hundreds of thousands of people dying unnecessarily is not just a fact of life. So it's hard. I think it's hard to make the argument that America was great in 2020 under Donald Trump. I mean, give me a break. And listen, I have one question I want to ask you. The only question that throughout this conversation really is pertinent. Can you name me 5 policies that Donald Trump got passed through Congress his first time in office?
If I'm being honest, I was young.
Doesn't matter.
No, it actually does matter. Actually,
No, it doesn't. I was young too. I was like what, 14 or 15 when Trump got elected?
In 2017, I was in 7th grade. I mean, no, actually, no. I was not in 7th grade. I was a freshman in high school. So, at that point, I was not paying attention to any politics. When COVID happened, that's when I learned more about it. So really, no, I don't. And I'm actually being truthful.
No, I appreciate the honesty 100%. I'd way rather you say I don't know than, trying to pretend to know. But my point is that I think it's hard to make the argument that Donald Trump was so accomplished and so good at being president if you can't name what he did as president, right? So I understand that maybe your family's conservative, and I understand that you were raised a certain way, which makes you conservative. But there are things that matter more than policy, and Trump is just so uniquely bad that I don't know how somebody could vote for him, but you did, and so I can't convince you of anything now.
I mean, it's just so. Let me just tell you something. Actually, I moved out of a blue state to a red state. I grew up in Oregon. I moved to Montana when I got done with high school, and at that point, I believe Kate Brown was the governor in Oregon. I believe the way that it was handled there was pretty bad. She even had the whole COVID state of emergency. It kept going until, let me say, end of 2022, and then it got lifted. When we moved to Montana, everything felt a lot better. You can tell the difference between Oregon and Montana because one's blue and one's red. Everything was just ran a lot better. I mean, you can laugh at that all you want, but it's true.
Well, and when did you move to Montana? What year?
I moved to Montana in 2021.
Okay, and what month in 2021 more specifically?
Let's see. I believe it was early June.
Early June. So you're comparing apples to oranges right now because you're saying, Montana was so much better with COVID and things like that when I moved. And it's the majority of the memories you have in Montana are post-COVID or when, the entire country was opened up. But the majority of memories you have, at least during the pandemic, and would you say Oregon it was? Oregon?
Yes.
Are during the pandemic. So of course you're going to have a swayed view of in red states it was so much better, and so it was handled, and then in blue states it's not. It's the majority of the time you were in Oregon it was height of COVID, and the majority of the time you were in Montana it was not.
No, so I've been visiting here for years and years. I basically grew up here because I had family here at the time. We came during COVID. We literally drove during COVID, and it was early, super early, and stuff was still open here. Masks weren't required.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's just a whole difference. I mean, it probably doesn't mean much to you, but hey, that's fine.
Also, somebody in the chat made a really good point that I should have brought up, which is population density matters as well. So in states where there's population's more sporadic, of course, there was a feeling of it being more open because in New York City, you're always seeing people and there's more restrictions with stuff like that. Whereas other states, there's not. But anyway, listen, I will wrap up the conversation there. I'll leave it there. I just want to circle more people up, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Hey, thank you for being chill and stuff. I really do appreciate it. So
yeah, man. Well, hey, thanks for coming up and having the conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Bye bye. Have a good one. Shout out to everybody coming from Dean's Live as well. I appreciate you. We love Dean. Shout out Dean. Thank you for everybody for coming over from his live. I appreciate you guys being over here. We're just chatting. We're chatting. D. Earl, thank you for the $1. I'm from Montana, and you can't tell it's a red state until election time. LL. He's crazy if he says he can tell the difference. Interesting. Good to know. I've never been to Montana as well. David, thank you for the $50. Oh my God, David, that is so incredibly kind. Saying, keep up what you do, man. All love and respect. Let's get VP Harris in the Oval Office. David, I love it. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's incredibly generous. Fill the chat with W's for David. $50 is so kind. I appreciate it, my man. Thank you. Alicia, thank you for the $10. You have amazing patience with a side of, are you really... Sorry, this is really bad. You have amazing patience with a side of, are you really this stupid? Keep up the good fight. 19 days to go. Yeah, I think I try to be nice. I try to be patient to the best of my ability. Sometimes it goes well. Sometimes it doesn't. But, you can see it in my face, what I'm thinking, which I will not vocalize. But I think Alicia did a good job. Lauren, thank you for the $5. I voted for Kamala in Colorado for my LGBTQ plus rights and for women's rights. Why is no one talking about Trump spreading nuclear sub-secrets? Great question, Lauren. Great question. I imagine that if you ask a lot of Trump supporters about, hey, you know that Donald Trump was just sharing around our secrets, they might not know that. So, John, thank you for the $5. Truckers for Harris. John, my man, I appreciate you. That's incredibly kind. Glad to hear that. Christy, thank you for the $2. Also, Truckers for Harris. Can we get that on a t-shirt, please? Christy, thank you for the $2. Voted blue in Pennsylvania yesterday. Christy. Oh my God, that just scared the crap out of me. This cup just fell. I apologize. Christy, fuck, dude. Christy, thank you so much for voting blue in. Sorry, that scared the crap out of me. Oh my God, dude. Sorry. Oh my God. Sorry. Thank you, Christy, for voting blue in Pennsylvania yesterday. I appreciate that. It's an important state. So if you live in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, please get out and vote now. Go vote, go vote, go vote. Go vote, man. Go vote. Same here, voted blue in PA. Amazing, Ghost. Amazing. Amazing. Look at this guy. Oh, Kamala's a felon, saying I'm always dodging the debate requests. Got to get them up here because that's stupid. Brent, thank you for the $5. Harris 2024. I appreciate you, Brent. Thank you for being here. Jessica as well. Brent's always here, by the way. She's great.
Hi.
Jessica. Oh yeah, you got to go, bro. You got to get the hell out of here, dude. You're not above the age of 18. Jessica, thank you for the $5. Remind guests that Trump lost more U.S. Sorry, I already read that one. But why not? You're right, Jessica. And finally, on Cash App, Alex, thank you for the $1. Wife and I are voting early next weekend in Michigan. Alex, please give your wife my best and tell her I said thank you. And thank you as well for voting early in Michigan. You live in a very important state, and I appreciate using your voice, man. Michael, thank you for the $5. Please pick me in the box. Well, I'm not sure what your username is, but again, it's random. It's random. This guy's saying he's MAGA. Bring him up. So we'll give him a shot. Hello?
Hello, Gary. How are you?
Yeah. Are you driving, man? Yeah. Fortunately, he is driving. Got to drop him down. I can't drive and be on TikTok Live. Let's bring up Looney. Voting blue in Texas. Wander with Bell. You're amazing. I hope you know that. It's fantastic. I love seeing all these voting blue in this state, that state. Please, I'm serious. If you have a relative, friend, family, or loved one, or if you live in a swing state, get them out and vote for Kamala Harris. Get them out and vote for Kamala Harris. Looney, hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Good. So talk to me. Why are you MAGA, man?
So, and I kind of want to, if it's all right, I want to debate, but I want to get your opinion.
Sure.
And I know you know a lot more about overall facts than I do. I don't deep dive into everything. But my two biggest issues, and you're welcome to debunk this. I've tried to do research, haven't done it too deep, is the economy and gun control.
Gotcha.
That's my two biggest things.
Okay.
And can I start with gun control first?
You start wherever you please.
Okay, so my issue specifically with Kamala, not with Biden, with Kamala, is she at first, I'm not remembering full sequences, but she at first had mentioned something about banning all assault weapons, and then she came back, went on that debate. Don't remember which debate it was, but she was like, me and Tim Walz are both gun owners. It's like, okay, cool. Maybe she's not trying to do anything like that. And then she mentions that buyback program. I want your opinion on what a buyback program will do, because I can tell you people that I know and most Republicans are not going to let the government come and take our guns.
Well, I think Kamala Harris has like a really common sense view on gun control. I think there's like a lot of, people that Republicans, specifically like Trump, that misrepresent her view, saying, "Oh, she's coming for your guns." She's not coming for your guns. A buyback program would be voluntary. Like the government wouldn't make you give your guns back. It'd be voluntary. If you're like, you know what, I have too many guns in my house, and like the statistics that if you have a gun in your house, you're more likely to use it on yourself or somebody you love than an intruder. And you see all these stories of like a young kid picking up a gun that's not stored correctly and then taking their own life or the life of somebody else. You don't want that. Even if you're a Republican, you're like, yeah, maybe I'll sell some of my firearms to the government and get a good return, adjusted for inflation, so you get your full money back. But it wouldn't be mandatory. She's not going door to door. And I think that an assault weapons ban is a good idea, and that it does not mean, again, that the government's going to come to your door and steal and take your gun, and they're not going to like find you or things like that. It just means that certain weapons would no longer be produced in the United States. But if you already have like an AR-15, for example, you don't have to give it in. And I think that's common sense. I won't rant too much longer, but she has common sense reform, like having mandatory mental health checks when you buy a firearm. And if you don't pass that mental health check, the seller can deny you the sale. Or raising the age to purchase an AR-15 if we're not going to get a ban. Or expanded background checks.
Those are two things that I think should go through.
Well, then you agree with Kamala Harris.
I don't think we should ban assault weapons. And you kind of brought up something that I think is the entire problem behind like school shootings, suicides, stuff like that. Not suicides, but it's suicide too, but not to the same degree. It's a mental health issue. We don't need to ban any weapons. If you like to have I don't forget what the class is, but you have to have a certain class license to own a fully automatic rifle.
Yeah.
But for like an AR-15, you don't. So it's a mental health issue. And we need to be providing. I don't think we should have bans on any guns that people have. AR-15s, handguns, etc. Background checks, I'm fine with. That's important. That prevents it happening more. But for like school shootings, you're not going, because if you banned guns and banned AR-15s, like it's kind of a crazy comparison, but the cartel isn't going to listen to you and not get an AR-15. That if somebody wants it bad enough, they're going to get it, and it's going to happen. So the assault weapons ban, I really think is kind of pointless in that sense.
So, I understand your perspective. I disagree. I mean, in terms of like, I'll just try to work backwards, and if I miss anything, just remind me of your point, and I'll try to respond. When it comes to the cartel, they actually get their guns from the United States. Like because we produce so many firearms every single day, every single year, there's like, as you know, like more firearms than people times 3, right? And so it's become very easy for the cartel to kind of have these guns funneled into their possession, and a lot of the firearms they're using are actually American-made weapons. So right. I think a assault weapons ban would really crack down on that and leave the cartel sort of unarmed in some way, or at least make them try to find another solution, which they're not rolling in dough to the point where they can like start up a factory and start producing assault weapons, right? So I think that would be an effective thing. But also, what you have to reckon with is that in countries where they don't have easy access to firearms, there's not as many mass shootings. In economies that are as developed as ours, there's not mass shootings. You don't see these terrible tragedies. You just don't see it. And even if you're like, well, let's just use Great Britain as an example. Even if you're like, well, in Great Britain, they have stabbings. Yeah, but the stabbings are less frequent, less deadly, and affect less people. So the fact of the matter is like gun control, where you have more gun control in states, there are less gun deaths. When there's less gun regulation, there are more gun deaths. This is CDC data that's readily available for anybody. So you have to reckon with the fact that in countries where they don't have weapons, this doesn't happen. And it's clear that the weapons and the firearms being readily available are the common theme there in terms of why it does or why it doesn't.
Okay. So what kind of ban are you agreeing with, like in particular?
A ban on sale. So no more production of like, and we can get into the intricacies of like what firearms are similar to AR-15s and what firearms can take similar bullets and things like that. But weapons that are similar to the AR-15, a ban on those production in the United States, a ban on sale, to try to hopefully like get them out of circulation in the United States.
Why not just make them harder to get?
Great. One sec.
You're good.
Sorry. Just hold on. I'm going to be right back. I think. Give me just 1 second. I actually don't know.
I really wasn't trying to fuck you up.
No. I don't know if you can use your key. Hi, it's Chris, everybody. Hi, say hi, Chris.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry. What was the last question you asked? I apologize.
I think it was the particular ban.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, just mostly things on like AR-15s and like, you know, obviously the colloquial word of that we use like for assault weapons is different than the technical definition. But in the colloquial term, which we, the public, understand it to be things like AR-15s, a ban on those kind of rifles and production and sale of those rifles.
Right. And I keep seeing comments because I kind of want to go over this too. I keep seeing comments. They're saying we don't need assault weapons. Now that's I mean, to a degree you could say that's true. Same for handguns, same for a knife, same for a car. I mean, I know it's kind of a wild comparison, I guess, but just saying that you don't need them isn't a good enough reason to have them banned. I can't agree with having stronger background checks, but for them to just not be sold when people are still going to get them anyway, if they have a will, they're going to get them.
But why do you think they're going to get them anyway?
In regarding to like mental health issues or criminals?
I also apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm just curious, like why you say like, oh, people are going to get AR-15s anyway. Why do you think that?
Well, I mean, you know, like a felon who can't own a gun, a lot of them will go back, depending on their crimes, obviously, will go back to jail for gun crimes. You know, they're not going to stop getting a gun just because it's banned and they can't have one.
But that's in current state America. So if the laws were to change, then the production of weapons in the United States, especially these deadlier weapons, would go down. So there would be less in circulation over time. It wouldn't be immediately. I mean, you know, there would still be a lot of firearms in circulation, but over time, the idea is that it would go down. So you're kind of comparing like present day law to possible law. And I actually think that if we banned the production of the AR-15s, things like what you're talking about, you know, reoffenders using that kind of weapon or getting their hands on that kind of weapon would go down. And I think a really great example of that is Australia. Like you can get an AR-15 delivered to your house from fucking Walmart, right, in the United States. Whereas in Australia, that same weapon, you can, it like costs like, I think the number is like around like $25,000 in the black market in Australia. And I think we all agree that criminals don't really have like $20,000, $30,000 just throw around, you know?
Right. But, and like I said, and I'm not closed-minded. I can't agree that that would deter a lot of it, but it would still happen, especially with how many we have here. It would still happen. And if you look like, and the shootings don't just come from like one culture or one race, you know, like there was the Vegas shooting with the old white guy. I don't remember what specific problems he had, but I think he had mental health problems to some degree.
He was a far right, kind of like anti-government guy.
Okay. And then there was, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was I've seen an article about a transgender, I don't know which gender, shot up like a Christian school, I think it was.
Yeah, so but like I mean, in terms of identity, the majority of shooters are, in terms of like these mass casualties events are, I shouldn't say mass shootings. I say like the worst mass shootings we've seen in American history are like straight white guys.
Yeah, white men. And I can agree with that. But it kind of goes back to the mental health issue. Like it's a mental health thing. You know, and like if they're not right in the head and you ban these assault weapons, everybody knows people. And even if you ban the production of them, yeah, it could decrease it to a degree. But even if they don't get them illegally through like a black market buy or something like that, they probably know a family member who has one. You know, I mean, look at California. California is like one of the most Democrat states, or I think it is the most Democrat state. And then there's Nevada. I don't know actually which side Nevada leans to. Do you know that? Off the
It's
top of your head.
it's more of a swing state. They have like a Republican governor, but Democratic senators. It's kind of interesting.
Okay, and how are Nevada's gun laws?
I actually don't know what Nevada's gun laws are on a state level. I couldn't tell you much in depth about that. I think it's somewhat lenient, but again, don't take my word for it.
Okay, but yeah, and like I said, I'm open minded, and I agree with some of the things. Like I would say, a good middle ground for me, because I think middle ground is very important, especially for this election.
Sure.
Would be, I would be okay with more in depth background checks. Like, yeah, it makes it harder for me to buy a gun, but that will decrease, and it has been shown to decrease, like shootings and stuff like that, and suicides, from a dad going to buy a gun and, sadly a kid using it or something like that. Like that will decrease with mandates to make it harder. But I don't think a full ban is the right way to go, because the Second Amendment was put in place for us to be able to defend ourselves if the government was to weaponize the military against us. That's what that's for, along with self-defense. I'm not saying Kamala or Trump would do that, but there's a chance that either one of them could, and I'm open-minded, and I know that. There's a chance that that could happen on either side 10 or 50 years from now. We need to have that to be able to stand up and defend ourselves.
So, I mean, I think what you have to think about here, and I think like everybody has to think about here, is that like we all acknowledge that gun control works. Even you yourself are acknowledging that, like, yeah, background checks would work, and if we had like as you mentioned, like a total ban on the production of or sale of assault weapons, like AR-15s in the country, that would probably work in some capacity. And we already know, that it worked to a degree. In 1994, we had an assault weapons ban that Republicans refused to renew in 2004 when it expired, even though it decreased mass shootings. But aside from that, you do have to reckon with the fact that, like, we all know that gun control would work. So do we have the courage to stand up and say, yeah, enough is enough? We have to stop seeing these tragedies on the news every single day. We have to stop sending thoughts and prayers and actually act. But also, I think what you specifically focus on there is interesting, because you actually agree with a gun control policy that was passed under the Biden administration. It was called the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. This is something that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden worked on. And what it did is what you wanted it to do. It expanded background checks. The Biden administration has also taken executive action on closing the gun show loophole when it comes to evading background checks. And that bill gave a huge increase in mental health funding and research. One of the main things that bill did was hire 15, I think the number's around 15,000 new mental health workers in schools across the country. Now, that might sound like nothing, but it's like a 30 to 35% increase of the already existing mental health professionals we have in schools. So a massive increase. So if you're sitting here and saying, like, you know what, gun control is actually a pretty big issue for me, and you have these kind of things that you want worked on, then, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden worked on it, and Donald Trump, not so much.
Okay, and I don't know about that bill or law that they've passed, but I did buy an AR in 2022, so I don't know if it was passed at that point.
I don't know. It depends on when you bought it, and it depends. Some of these things take time to take effect. But yeah, it's called the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. It's also Republicans voted for this bill, so good stuff. I would highly recommend taking a look at it. It's like the first piece of major gun legislation passed in 30 years. So.
Yeah. And see, I can agree with that. I did a lot to get that AR, and yeah, I'd like to just go in, give cash, buy it, but that's not how it works. So, like, I didn't have a problem with giving my identification and stuff like that and having to do background checks. And like, even some Republican states are actually still pretty strict on gun laws. Like, I'm prior military, so I lived in Tennessee, and it might be like this throughout the country. I'm not sure. But I had my home of record in another state, a Republican state as well. And I went back there, moving back, and because I was still on orders from the government, I wasn't able to buy any firearm. So, like, there's still restrictions like that are kind of annoying. But your background checks and stuff like that, like, would you think you would agree in a middle ground scenario of the background checks we have right now, possibly passing like a psych exam? And I know that don't always work, because you can kind of fake your way out of a psych exam to a degree, but honestly, like I would be okay with the psych exam. I think that could drop the numbers of shootings and stuff like that by probably up to half. I think that would work great.
I'd be perfectly. That's one of my main things I propose when it comes to gun control, which is a mandatory mental health evaluation. Now, I also have things like mandatory training and permits, red flag laws, permit to purchase laws, things like that. But if we could get a bill where we have mandatory mental health checks and a licensed psychologist has to perform them to the best of their ability, 100%. I would love that bill to be passed, and that's something that Kamala Harris has talked about and Joe Biden has talked about. Donald Trump, not so much.
Yeah, and I think that most Republicans and conservatives and Democrats and liberals would all come to a middle ground on that as well, for the most part, except like the far left and far right, like extremists.
Right.
I think they would mostly come to a middle ground on that, because at the end of the day, like, if you're not sane, you're not going to pass it. So the only people that should really be mad about it are the people that aren't going to pass it. So yeah. I think that could work. And that's what that would be my line though. Like that psych exam would be my line for me.
No red flag laws though?
What do you mean red flag laws?
So a red flag law is essentially like when somebody in your community is exerting concerning behavior. Let's just say they're going on social media and they're saying, I am planning an attack on the local school. And they're posting,
100%. Yeah.
And
100%.
you can bring this to the attention of the authorities and have their weapons temporarily taken away. And then they go before a court and the court decides whether they're in a right mental capacity to have those weapons. I mean, would you agree with a law like that?
I don't know who wouldn't. Have you met people who haven't?
Yeah. There's a lot of people who think that like red flag laws are a violation of the Second Amendment because it's law enforcement like seizing somebody's weapons. And I just think that's so dumb because this is just common sense. The Supreme Court and courts have all been clear that gun regulation is constitutional. There just has to be like a balance where it's not, the state infringing on their rights. But obviously the desire to have a safe community is more important than that, in my view. So great. That's also something that Kamala Harris supports and Joe Biden supports. Donald Trump has said that that's bad, that red flag laws are unconstitutional even.
Okay. I'd have to look into that. I don't recall him saying that. Can we get into the economy? This is something I'm not as knowledgeable on, like at all.
Yeah.
Chris,
you want to talk to this? You want to talk to my friend Chris about the economy?
Yeah, I know Chris.
I love talking about the economy. Let's chat.
Well, you can unplug the microphone if you want.
What's up?
We can both hear if you want to unplug the microphone.
Oh no, that's fine.
Do it.
I gotta run down to my car in a second. What's up, man? How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Well, I mean, I'm in North Carolina and I drove like 6 hours here and I forgot my suitcase, so I've been better, but that's all right. It happens. So talk to me. What's you're voting for Trump?
Yeah. Not gonna lie though, I'm a little bit jealous. You're in North Carolina. I wanted to move there.
North Carolina. Oh, sorry, you're water. Yeah, North Carolina's dope. I like it here. Where are you voting right now?
Missouri.
Missouri. Okay, got it. So what how do you feel about the economy? What do you want to chat about?
So here's my thing. You're 20, 22?
22, yep.
Okay, so I'm 22 as well. We're the same age.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So we obviously we couldn't vote whenever Trump and Hillary were running. Mm-hmm. So my thing is, and I've done a little bit of look into this, like I've told Harry, like I'm open-minded. I'm not say eager, but I'm willing to listen and kind of learn more about it. Mm-hmm. And I'll do my own dive into it. But the Trump tax plan, mm-hmm. I don't think that, and if you could give me statistics, that'll help better. But I don't think that is what everyone is complaining about with the economy. Because if you take a look at I think like Missouri tax in the lower brackets, like I think under 120,000 a year is like, if you got a weekly check, I think it's like $60 a check. Mm-hmm. Federal taxes is like 200 or so. Federal taxes are a different thing, but I think what's hurting everybody is state taxes from mostly, and I'll say this, and I've also heard other people say it from these states like California. Like California's state tax is ridiculous. That's what's killing people, not necessarily the federal taxes. Now, I do think our federal taxes need to be better spent, but that's like a whole other topic. But what's killing people is state taxes. like, did you know, like in New York, there's I know liquor tax is pretty common, but there's like a clothing tax now, is what I was told. I got a buddy who lives up there. But like a clothing tax is kind of ridiculous because everything you buy is taxed. You sell something, you invest it, you buy it, you keep it in your accounts. Like it's all taxed.
Right. Yeah. I think so. It's also say like in terms of state taxes, I actually, I'm under the impression that like I agree, like California and New York have like really high state taxes. I actually live in like Harry lives in New York. I live in Georgia, so like my energy prices in Georgia are like quite low, and like our state taxes are fine. So, but I also think that like objectively, like if California is a good example, right? If you took California and seceded it from the United States, it would be a top 5 economy in the world by GDP just by itself, right? So like obviously it's gonna there is a lot of benefits to living in California or let's say living in Los Angeles, but also like it's an incredibly expensive place to run, operate, to have the infrastructure to make sure I guess it exists. And so like I think it's like more reasonable, like even in like New York, like if you live in the middle of Manhattan, you live in like the most densely populated place on earth with everything readily available at your fingertips. There's a lot of big money there. There's a lot of, big people there, but it costs quite a bit of money to run New York City. You need a massive amount of money for infrastructure, for police officers, for maintenance to keep all those buildings in check. And if I think like that just comes down to like capitalism. If people are willing to pay that high of a state income tax to live in New York City because of the benefits, for example, then that's fine. If they don't want to do that, then they can move to a different state.
Right. So what can the federal government do to help that? Because California is like one of the I not say like best, but like gorgeous states. Like there's a lot of cool stuff in California, but like San Francisco has completely gone to shit. Like one thing that really did aggravate me, I think this was starting in 2022 when was it Xi Jinping when he came down. People are literally shitting on the streets of California, or not California, San Francisco. Like there's parts of that are like a literal. Oh, can I not cuss?
No, you can cuss. You're fine.
Oh, okay. There's parts of that are a literal shithole, but they wanted to clean it up just because Xi Jinping was coming. Like if they know that it's that bad and it took them like a week to get it prepped for how they want it to look, why let it go back to the way it was? Why would like Newsom? Like he has the most control over that, I would think. Why would he let that go back?
Yeah, so like I think first in terms of like what the federal government can do, again, like this is where like I'm pretty staunch about like Kamala Harris's economic plan versus Donald Trump. Like, we're talking about like lowering taxes for people making below $400,000 a year, increasing taxes for those making above $400,000 a year, a first time, child tax credit, a first time, a first generation home buyer or first time home buyer credit. And like, I think that, that paired with like trying to crack down more on like price gouging and things like that, and like making sure that people pay their fair shares. Like, it's very clear that like Kamala Harris's plan will add less to the deficit, will not cause inflation, and will like increase our GDP just in general, right? Like we had 16 independent Nobel Prize winning economists all come together, pen a letter and say, we think Donald Trump's plans are like very likely to cause inflation and lead us to like a potential recession in the middle of next year, whereas Kamala Harris's plans will do the opposite. And we've seen like economists say that over and over again. I don't really know that Donald Trump has like a competent plan on the economy besides he floats all these things about tariffs, but like tariffs are going to do nothing but cause inflation. They're an inflationary policy, and he lies about how they work all the time because I don't even know if he knows how they work. So I think just in general, like again, Kamala Harris like investing in like normal Americans, like we saw under the Biden administration, like a child tax credit, a first-time home buyer credit, lowering taxes, and now we have things in play like we're investing tons of money in manufacturing, climate change, infrastructure, which is going to lead to even more job growth for a lot of those individuals, and also just the general fact that I totally lost my train of thought here. Lowering taxes, all this stuff. Small businesses. Oh yeah, the small business tax credit is going to move. The standard deduction will move from $5,000 to $50,000. Like these are all competent plans that will move this country forward. Is what I'm trying to say. And like I don't think Donald Trump has those.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. Like I will just be honest. I don't really know shit about what all that does. I don't really study economics like that. But the small business, if that's like actually going to help Yeah, I could agree with that. But I have kind of three things. The tariffs. Would the tariffs not bring more jobs to the United States, keeping things American made? That would, I feel like that is what the point of it was to bring more jobs here, and a lot of people could use those jobs.
In general, in general, like a potential want of through a tariff is to bring more jobs to the United States, but also like in the way Donald Trump describes them, these it tends to be, most economists agree that like the negatives will far outweigh the positives on something like just a general broad tariff. When he talks about 10 or 20% tariffs on literally everything, that's just going to cause a massive increase in pricing, which is going to, obviously devalue the dollar and lead us back into like a spiral of like toward recession. And I think that like, again, we have unemployment right now at, I don't know what the exact number is, 4.1 or 2% or maybe 3%, which 4.3%, which it's like ticked up because, inflation is coming down, which is a good thing. But like in general, like we've had some really solid unemployment numbers. I don't know that there's like this massive need for more American, like companies to be coming here to open American jobs. I agree that like our thing should be American made, but I think that there's like a lot better ways to do that, like incentivize capitalism. Like the Biden-Harris administration signed the CHIPS Act, which was giving small businesses tax cuts to create computer chips in the United States. It's led to like this massive amount of investment in manufacturing for computer chips, like literally an amount of spending we haven't seen ever, according to the Department of Treasury. And so like that's a more reasonable way to bring jobs here, as opposed to like these very broad tariffs that are going to mostly negatively impact the economy by like, again, causing inflation. Because even if companies bring their jobs here, they're going to be raising the prices of goods because it's now more expensive for them to get the goods to the consumer. Either they're going to pay the extra tax and they're going to push it on to the consumer, or they're going to move their industry to the United States and start making things in the United States, which is going to be more expensive.
Yeah, I guess I could see that because, your child labor over in China and whatnot versus people who deserve to actually get paid good.
Exactly. And like, I think it's shitty, right? I think it's shitty. Like I obviously I would prefer that like we're not, getting a bunch of products from labor like that, or they're being made in the United States. I just, again, like I think a much more efficient way for our economy long-term to do that is to like, again, like just let capitalism be capitalism. Hey, let's give businesses a bunch of tax cuts. So they want to create these manufacturing facilities, and let's give them a bunch of incentives to create like really powerful computer chips. So then they start from the ground up, start building that business here. And all of a sudden, like, I know Harry knows this better off the top of his head, but like we right now account for 0% of the world's, chips, like the chips you see in your phone or your car. And I think by 2030, we want to be 20% of the world's chips. So like that's a whole new industry, and just in the United States off like investing that way, as opposed to like these broad tariffs.
Okay. So I know a lot of this. I'm trying to stay on the same topic. I know a lot of your normal, the people who don't come on these debates, who aren't like through TikTok seeing all of this stuff. One of their most important things is, how am I going to get like prices down? And I know one thing that like I can debunk, and I'll tell you, Charlie Kirk, I'm assuming you know who he is.
Sorry, say that name one more time.
Charlie Kirk.
I know who Charlie Kirk is. Yep.
So one thing I will debunk from him that is false is he was saying it was something about buying a home. You need like $125,000 to buy a home. I make like $70K, and I was able to buy one. And we're moving into it in a couple weeks. So like that's false. So that the housing economy isn't as bad as people are making it out to be. Now, I will say up towards the city where I live, there was a lot more houses, but the difference in pricing was I found one the same square footage. It wasn't even in a good area in the city. Same square footage, same beds, same baths. It was $50,000 more, and it was 20 minutes from another place I was looking at that was $50,000 cheaper. Mm-hmm. So and like food prices and like price gouging.
Yep.
I've heard like you, Parker, and Dean talk about like the federal government isn't involved in that. But what is Kamala Harris, if she's elected, what is she going to do to fix that? Because I think you'll agree with like grocery prices. Like that's insane. I can't go to the grocery store for 2 weeks of groceries without paying $500, and I'm in a cheap state.
Right. And your question, like relating to the housing, was like, how is she going to, like, you were saying that the housing market is not as bad as you say people make it out to be.
Yeah, like a lot of like hard right conservatives try to make it out to be super bad. If it was that bad, I wouldn't be able to buy a house, and I was able to. So it's not as bad as they make it, but like the interest rates, like I got locked in at a 5%, so I got pretty lucky. But I was looking at other lenders, and they were telling me in my state, Missouri, it was like 7-8%, and I was like, that's ridiculous, because under Trump, my mom actually bought a house, and they bought it at 2.5%.
Right.
But under Biden, and I know COVID happened and the inflation happened, but the rates are still still about the same.
Yeah, I think a lot, like obviously a lot of like Harry or me or Parker or Dean will argue is like just like cause and effect, obviously, in terms of like, you know, like inflation's higher or, you know, interest rates are higher, but like that, there's no evidence that has like much to do with things like Biden-Harris policy, for example. But in terms of like, again, I think that like it is important to note that we've had like economically, we've had the fastest recovery from COVID in the world. And we also like have the strongest economy in the world by far. So, you know, our GDP grew faster than any other nation on earth this year, and it wasn't close. It's supposed to do the same next year, even accounting for the jobs regained by COVID, which that's not how economics works in my opinion, but whatever. Let's say that, you know, we take away the jobs regained by COVID. Like the Biden-Harris administration has had more job growth, like more jobs added, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought again. More jobs added. Their GDP has grown faster than Donald Trump's, again, even taking away for this like COVID variable. The dollar is objectively like stronger. We're using like the US dollar and more payments around the world than really ever before, which again, I would argue is like another like kind of conservative fear mongering BS. And so, you know, like comparatively, we're doing very, very well. I think that like moving forward, like we're still looking at this like 2% inflation target. So, you know, the Fed's going to continue to do whatever the Fed needs to do and like lower rates, but obviously they're still not low enough. And I think like Kamala Harris in terms of like being able to go after companies, potentially like open up legislation to go after companies for price gouging is going to be big. Because again, like when you go to the grocery store, the question becomes like how much of that, what are the profits of these companies? Like how much of that is price gouging? And I think like the other factor that's not talked a lot about those type of plans, the plans just in general surrounding like going after corporations, going after price gouging. I think the thing that's not talked about enough is like that's going to significantly increase consumer confidence if it's done correctly. So like if it, you know, a lot of like, you know, we have a moment like COVID, or we have a moment where like there's fears of a recession. Like if people have this like much more confidence in the federal government to be able to like just allow them, it doesn't necessarily have to be cheap, but like allow them to get goods at a reasonable rate, I'll call it, then I think that like they're much more likely to like be comfortable with their money in a bank and not rush to pull it out, or their money in the market, or just be generally confident in like the federal government's ability to like handle those things, which I think could be like an added benefit. Although we don't know much about the legislation, so that's kind of broad. Okay.
What did you think about, Trump hasn't said this, and neither is Kamala, but what did you think about RFK's, whatever the food industry is called, I don't know the exact name for it, but like wanting to like abolish that and redo it?
Abolish the FDA? Or not the FDA, wait.
Yeah, I forget the acronym for it.
Wait, RFK wanted to abolish like a 3-letter agency?
No, like the way that like we process food. It's like you ever hear people talking about when they go to other countries, like
he's talking about like banning like a bunch of additives in food.
Yeah, like all the processes, like all the processed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think in general, like I don't know. I think RFK like plays a lot of like. I think in general you can start on an okay path or like an okay foundation, and then it tends to just like dive into like really nonsensical like misinformation. So like I agree that like obviously America has like a problem with things like obesity, for example, but I don't think it's because of like the scare tactics, in my opinion, that he'll use about like things like a bunch of food additives or like Red 40 that the FDA has deemed safe and are even like used in other countries. Like there's a big talk about like Red 40 or the food dye and like Gatorade, and everyone says like, oh, it's banned in every other country. No, it's not. It's just titled differently in every other country. Or like fear mongering around like diet soda, aspartame causes cancer, which is just like absurd and absolutely incorrect. And so like I think like, yeah, we can start on the foundation of like America has an obesity problem. Why? Because people eat, because objectively we're the richest country in the world. People have and because of hypercapitalism, they have food readily available to them that's going to be not nutrient dense and very high in caloric value, like fast food. And I think like really that starts to come down to like education. Like we need to be able to educate people at a young age. I'm big on like mental health, also like, mental health in schools around like eating and things like that. But also like we have a big problem in America that RFK never talks about with like things like food deserts, right? Where you have places in America that are like in general, like impoverished areas where you literally within a 50-mile radius cannot get food anywhere else besides like the local McDonald's and the local Burger King. Right. So it's like, obviously people there are like going to be subjected to what they had, especially if they don't have a car. And then we talk about like grocery deserts where literally within a 50-mile radius, the only place you can buy groceries is like a Dollar General. And that's a problem because like Dollar General is not going to carry it. Like Dollar General is going to carry like highly processed, like already cooked frozen foods with like that's lost a lot of their nutrients, high in caloric value, as opposed to like they're not going to carry any like raw meat or raw vegetables, etc. And so like, again, that's a really big problem. So we need to be like investing in those places and like invest in education. I think like most of what RFK spits, especially when it comes to like food and health, is like a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I know I forget the name of it, but the Red 40, what it's called in other countries. But yeah, I agree with that. And honestly, I think the fast food chains, I think they need to.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think exactly. I think that's like I think that's an effect. Like all of this comes back to just the general idea of like being a Democrat, right? I think a lot of that comes back to like hyper capitalism in my mind. I am obviously very supportive of capitalism, but I think that like we should make the federal government larger and give a lot of these agencies more power so they can crack down on things like this. In fact, a good example is yesterday, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, everyone's going to love this in the chat if you didn't know this. They issued a rule that in the next 60 days, everybody has to implement. It's called click to cancel, which means every business who allows you to sign up for anything online has to make it as easy to cancel as you do to sign up. So like the gym, you know how it's impossible to cancel a gym membership without calling?
No more. My God, yeah.
Right? They're going to be required to have a button on their website that says click to cancel because of federal government regulations. Same with like, like cell phone businesses like AT&T, right? That's the definition of like the government stepping in a capitalist system that's objectively not regulated enough, in my opinion, and saying like, okay, we're going to like make this more pro-consumer. And I think that like, again, you could even start to apply those things for like things like fast food. Like how are we going to crack down on the fact that like, a lot of these things are like the portion sizes are going up, or, like how are we going to get maybe the FDA involved to like make these things more healthy? Isn't that amazing, chat? I literally love it. It's incredible, dude. And objectively, things like that are like good for the average American. I have something on my collections right now. Like my credit is partially hurt because 2 years ago, I couldn't cancel a gym membership. I tried relentlessly to, and they threw the remaining charge to my collection. I paid it off. But like as a 22-year-old, damn, like that's something I wouldn't have had to go through if like I was able to cancel this membership more easily. Right. And I'm sure there's like a lot of other Americans like in a boat like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't think that's a left or right thing. I think that's
just like
American thing.
Right.
But one thing I wanted to also talk about was I've seen a lot of your guys' clips on like your stances on abortion, just trying to cover different topics.
Yeah.
Your stances on abortion. Mm-hmm. So I've seen a lot of people that say that Trump is going to enact a federal abortion ban. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that that is true?
I do.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there is an amendment in the Constitution to where he cannot do that. And he has also stated that he will not enact a federal abortion ban. I've seen at least 3 clips that I can recall of him saying that. I do think I'll tell you, I don't agree with abortion. Actions have consequences. That's how I view it. The conception argument I can kind of make, but I would think that, if actions have consequences, you need to deal with it. Now, I would say that I'm lenient towards, or like one thing I don't agree, like with Charlie Kirk on, is he thinks if somebody is R word, that they should still have that child and give it a chance. That would be an exception that I would say, no, leave that up to the person. but just because, and that's less than 1% of all abortions, or like mother's life in danger, or incest. Those are less than 1% of all abortions. So I think I don't think it's right to have an abortion just because you made a bad choice.
So I'll talk about like some of the Trump abortion bans in a second, but let me speak on that, and then like if Harry wants to hop in. Do you want to talk about abortion, Harry? Okay. I just don't want to like, take over his life. So I do want to say this, like, because this is like it's a passionate topic for me, just coming from like a place of like, I was naive. And probably like I was not very naive at one point to like the realities of some of these statistics, because I'm just like a straight white male and a college student. And so it's like important to me that like, in terms of abortion, I think like a lot of the issue right now, in my mind, especially with like Roe v. Wade being overturned, is general healthcare for women, right? So we've seen like red states, like I'm in Georgia, we have a 6-week abortion ban. Texas has a complete total abortion ban. Alabama, Mississippi, like the United States already has the highest maternal mortality rate, meaning women who die while pregnant, while giving birth, or shortly after birth get the highest maternal mortality rate in the developed world. Right now, we rank 55th according to the CDC. So in a lot of these states, like Georgia, doctors feel a lot more pressure to do their job. They, the federal or the state governments are threatening to criminalize them, and passing these like laws that are very vague and confusing. They're having to consult with attorneys to do their job, like not even around abortion, but maybe a woman comes in and needs help because she is pregnant and something is going wrong, but they don't want to risk a potential felony because a Republican state government that writes vague laws is looking to criminalize doctors. Or you have in Louisiana, they reclassified mifepristone, which is like a common abortion drug, but can also be used in a miscarriage to stop people from essentially bleeding out. They rescheduled it as a Schedule 4. So instead of being at the bedside table, it has to be locked up across hospitals. So doctors right now are doing time drills where they're running to see how fast they can get from one end to the other to save somebody's life. So the thing is, like, why would doctors want to work under these conditions? They don't. So in Georgia, half our counties right now don't have an OBGYN. Like, a lot of women are driving well over an hour to see a doctor. And this doesn't have to just be when pregnant. Like, women see that's a primary care doctor. Women see an OBGYN once or twice a year. We saw a stat in Texas that the maternal mortality rate from 2019 to 2022 went up 56% nationally. Or I'm sorry, 56%. It went up 56% in Texas compared to 11% nationally. And again, they have a complete and total abortion ban. We see rates of women dying in Texas while pregnant or while giving birth, shortly after birth, of like close to 40 deaths per 100,000. For reference, like Canada's maternal mortality rate is 8 per 100,000. So we're seeing like these really catastrophic health outcomes. And when you go talk to women, you go talk to doctors, there's like a general just lack of healthcare. There's not a lot of OBGYNs who want to operate in a state like not readily available OBGYNs that want to operate in a state like Texas. Women are too scared to show up to the OBGYN. And when they're not getting the basic healthcare first, even before they're pregnant, like that's going to increase the maternal mortality rate. But when they are pregnant and they're showing up to get help, doctors are like less likely to be able to help. Like we saw a case in Georgia, Amber Thurman. She's 28 years old. She travels state lines to take abortion pills. In North Carolina, comes back, has a complication where essentially there was still fetal matter left over or pregnancy tissue left over in her uterus, and it caused her to be septic. This would be a 15 to 20 minute procedure called a DNC under like an antibiotics, and she would be sent home. It's like a really common procedure. She showed up to the hospital in Atlanta, Piedmont Hospital. I was actually born there. She showed up. The doctors waited 19 hours to perform surgery. Her organs ended up failing and she died. She was 28 years old. She had a child, good health, and she was going to go to nursing school, right? That's an objective failure of like the American healthcare system. Why did that happen? Probably because doctors were consulting with attorneys because the Georgia law on something like Amber Thurman's case is vague and confusing. DNCs, if you perform a DNC to perform an abortion, that can be a felony with up to 10 years in prison. Well, Amber Thurman had already had a miscarriage, but the thing is, her miscarriage was not natural and spontaneous. It wasn't naturally occurring. It occurred by abortion drugs. So there was a lot of questions. Again, you're facing like these questions, and like I know Law of the Wild's here. Like if Harry wanted to pull them up, he could talk more about the specifics of like this law being contradictory. But again, you're facing the pressure of like if you don't do this right, and a Republican DA sees it as wrong, that you could be facing a grand jury. A grand jury could indict you on a felony that's up to 10 years in prison. And now you're a doctor trying to go to court to defend yourself about why you made the decision. You don't want to work under those conditions. And we're seeing absurdly gross healthcare outcomes for women in the United States because of Trump-led abortion bans. And then I would argue that like Trump, a lot of like, Trump's getting, killed on abortion because at one point, multiple times, he has said over and over again, he wants to sign a national abortion ban. Now it feels like he's going back on that. At some points, he'll say, we had like during the election cycle where he said like, I'd support a 6-week, a federal, 12-week abortion ban. And the next day he said he wouldn't. So like, I really wouldn't believe anything Donald Trump says on abortion. I think he's like, he's saying things not because he believes them, but because like he is more interested in like what the American public will think. And I think that's like really, really bad. So those are like my general thoughts on abortion. And also just like, we're just like the amount of stories from women from these abortion bans, I can go on and on. I mean, there's a 7th grade girl in Mississippi who was assaulted in her own backyard, forced to carry the baby to term because the nearest abortion clinic was in Chicago. The mother worked 2 jobs and wanted to take her. Like, well, exactly. So that's the thing is like, you can have thoughts on being pro-life, but be, allow people to choose, because regardless of reason, in my opinion, like women should have like the fundamental constitutional right to an abortion. I don't care what the reason is, but also the if you're, in my opinion, if you're not supportive of like a 7th grade girl not being able to terminate her pregnancy in Mississippi, then like I would say like you're not supportive of like the Republican abortion law. That doesn't mean that you have to be totally in support of Kamala Harris's policy, but like the stance on abortion for Republicans is like really, really extreme in causing people to die.
Yeah, so I can off the record.
I threw like a ton at you. It's my bad.
You're good. My big thing, and what I have seen a lot, is it's not that the mother's life was in danger. Like I've seen like interviews where they'll get asked, like woman will get asked like, well, what would you need an abortion for? And they'll bring up those 3 things: the rape, incest, and mother's life in danger. But then they'll be asked, okay, well, if that didn't happen, well, it's my body. So, I should be able to do what I want with it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's your body, but if it's not one of those circumstances, it's not that baby's fault that it's not that baby's fault that you made a bad choice. Why should that child have to pay for your mistake? Now, the other 3 aren't their mistake. Those are very, very like bad scenarios, but you going to like an example, like you going to a party and sleeping with somebody, you find out you're pregnant. You shouldn't be able to just abort that child. That's my stance on it.
Got it. So I'll say like, I'm going to say 2 things on this, and I'll like shift Harry up. So like, cause again, this is his live, guys, double tap the screen. But like, I do want to point out that like, again, like just because you engage in an action with like risk doesn't mean you like accept the consequence of that risk. So like if I'm driving in a car and like I'm at a red light when I'm driving to Raleigh today, and like a drunk driver just like smashes into me, like I'm not even moving and I need medical attention, like they're not going to show up and say like, oh, you knew the risk of getting in a car. Like I'm not going to give you healthcare. And I think that like in general, like again, like I really don't like the standpoint of like, this like idea of like, oh, you go to a party, you sleep with someone and you make a bad decision. Like, again, that's not like, we're in the abortion conversation. I feel like we're starting to like paint women in a light of like, oh, they just like open their legs or whatever. Like, obviously, like,
no, that's not what I'm saying.
No, I know that's not your like intention. I think like, I can tell like your good faith. I'm just saying like, I think like that's kind of where we start to lead. And like, like obviously like sex is like a 2-person job. Right. But in general, like the one thing I'll say, and then like, I'll let Harry up to talk about this, but like, again, and let's go at this from like a different stance, because like I have a lot of thoughts about like a woman's fundamental right, regardless of the reason. But here's actually, I've rarely like argue like this, but I think it is interesting. Like if you say like your stance is, I don't think women should be able to get an elective abortion, like you're starting to paint a line of like, where does the federal government's role come in for just like general like healthcare decisions, and like who is deciding that, right? So like it's going to be very difficult to start to like just from a pure logistic standpoint to like be passing laws about like, oh, I think women can get an abortion here, but not here. Again, like you're causing providers who would be providing these things or providing services to leave the state. You're putting like a lot of pressure under doctors and the judicial system. So like just like from a practicality standpoint, it's difficult, but also like, again, what role does the federal government have to be like engaging in conversations like this? Like, again, I almost feel like some days I look at myself and I'm like, I don't even know what's like, the party, I would be like the party of small government previously, the Conservative Party would say like the government has no right to be in a room with a woman and a doctor and to make that decision. And I would be in like full agreement of that. So I think just like from a practicality standpoint, like it's not possible. But also like again, I don't think like women as the ones carrying the baby, as the ones going through like a 9-month pregnancy that's putting their life at risk. That's obviously like causing a lot of drain on their resources, and it's their body. I don't think it's necessary I don't know that it's necessary to know the reason. I think anybody should be able to get an abortion up to a certain point. And there's one more thing I was going to say, which was they should be able to. They should be able to.
Things after you.
They should be able to get an abortion at any point. Elective abortion. But also like just the last thing is like abortion is like a pretty it's a very hard decision to make. So like I don't think that there's like a lot of women who are just like I think it's possible to like do something that like maybe I slept with someone without like protection, like I blame myself, etc. That doesn't mean that like the impending like decisions to make aren't incredibly difficult.
Right. So I have two things on that. I don't think the federal government should have a say at all in banning or legalizing it completely. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of twisted on crime or not. I think that's kind of extreme, but I think it should be left up to the states. And correct me if I'm wrong, but citizens have more power in the states.
Well, I'll say this, and I'll let Harry out. Like again, I think for like certain things, it's important for like there to be. Well, I would argue for a lot more things than most people, but in general, I think it's important for like the federal government to create standards for a lot of these things. Like women are getting like the correct healthcare across the board, and like people in like New York are not having different outcomes than like people in Kentucky to such a vast degree. But but like that's like a more complicated. Like in Georgia, like we. Like our state legislature is very Republican dominated, and our governors are Republican, and there's a lot of issues on the ballot. We're not allowed to have like a state referendum. That's not constitutional. So like we can't go to the ballot and just vote on abortion. We'd have to like override. We'd have to get a Democrat House and Senate, and like those things start to become like a lot more complicated in terms of like, there's red states who have like constitutionalized their right to an abortion, like Kansas, for example. So like I think it's a little more wishy-washy, but I'll let Law of the Wild talk about it. And Harry, I'm sorry for I was fucking ranting on Harry. Literally just woke up. So I'm trying to like spit all those things. Yo, by the way, brother, it was good talking to you. Like you're good. It was good.
Yeah, see, I'm telling you, this this gentleman right here.
Good fit. One more thing, Harry.
I'm sorry.
One more thing on that, if it's cool. Did you mute your mic? Your mic.
Yeah, I muted it. Sorry. Yeah, but yeah, you can go for it.
So back to the staying on the abortion thing. So it is the woman's body, right? But even Chris said it takes two to tango. So why does the man not have a say in that? Because there is a high chance if the woman chooses to have that child that the man is going to be responsible for paying child support if he doesn't want the baby. But if he wants the baby, it's completely up to the woman. The man has no say if the woman doesn't care. There's no legal argument there.
Well, I would argue that the man does have a say when he decides to sleep with a woman who's pro-choice.
Yeah, I mean,
if you don't want the possibility of an abortion, you should make sure that you're not sleeping with somebody who would entertain that as an option.
Right, but you wouldn't always know that, though.
I mean, maybe men should be a little bit more careful about selecting their partners. If it's that important to them and if they want to say in the process, they should make sure that they're only sleeping with women who share their values.
Okay, I can respect that.
I wanted to address, so you mentioned that you had an exception for grape. Were there any other exceptions that you granted?
The incest and mother's life in danger.
Okay, so from conception, day one, that would be unallowable unless it's one of those things.
I'll be honest. I'm not firm on it, but yeah.
Yeah, so Ludi, I totally respect your morals on this. Like, I have my own set of morals. What I'm really concerned about is what laws that are we going to pass that are going to impact women's lives. And when we write laws, they have to be extremely specific.
Right.
So yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, I'll be honest. I don't know a law that could necessarily help. I mean, I can't think of one like off the top of my head. I'm kind of torn on the conception thing. It's a moral thing, but it's also like, it just feels wrong. Like, I don't know, say if, like, this is situational, but you got your girlfriend pregnant, you guys get into an argument, and she doesn't want to keep the baby, you want to keep the baby, and your morals are, say, like, more conservative leaning. And in the end, if it's legalized, you don't really have a say in it if she doesn't take your thoughts into account. That's what makes me torn about it, because if the guy, like I said, if the guy does have sex with her and the child is born and he doesn't want anything to do with it, he's got to pay child support. But when he does want something to do with it, it's literally completely up to the woman at that point. And I get, and that goes back to what you were saying about know who you're sleeping with, but.
Yeah, I mean, that would be kind of be my default argument in there, is that if you're going to engage in a process that could result in the creation of a child, you need to carefully evaluate who you engage in that process with. But I guess my problem is, and my concern is, that I simply don't trust the government to get it right. Chris explained the case of Amber Thurman, which is a tragic case, but that's an exact example of when we allow states the ability to regulate the time, place, and manner that these can occur. There's always going to be those people who fall between the lines, and I just don't think it's just to make doctors who know what the best course of action should be have to wait and get a sign off from a lawyer to provide essential medical care.
Yeah, they do put like a bunch of bullshit between the fine print that makes it super hard. So yeah, I get that, and I'll agree with you on the trusting the government. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, I don't think anybody should trust really what the government says.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you there. So, and that's what it comes down to me is when we're allowing states to pass these, we're allowing basically an overwhelming majority of men to decide these critical things. And I tell you, I used to work at the state legislature, and these guys don't know their ass from a hole in the ground when it comes to like women's healthcare stuff. And they're the people who are voting on it, and they're voting like you. I'm not saying that degradingly. They're voting based off of their own personal morals, not off of what they think is going to be a sound policy moving forward.
I mean, I feel like that's what it kind of, for most people, that's what it comes down to is, like your morals on like who you're voting for. And we can get into the argument of Trump having was it Trump v. Carroll, the essay lady thing, and then the federal crimes. And then, and you can vote on morals, and most people probably do, but not. And like you seem pretty smart, and I've seen Harry debate a lot. So like you guys are smart. You do your research. You know what you're talking about. Like I'm not going to be a dick. Like I am a conservative, but you guys know what you're talking about. The average American has no idea what you're saying. Half the time, they do not know anything you're saying. So they're going to, along with their morals, they are going to take what you give them or what is fed to them. That's the problem.
Yeah, I agree. One of my favorite lines from Men in Black is, "A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky animals." They will follow whatever the outrage is. But just to kind of try to like button up this before we move on to anything else, is like I'm with you. Like when we're talking, what Kamala Harris wants to do is she wants to codify the protections of Roe versus Wade into law. So what that means is that women have the complete say in the first trimester, and actually up to the point of viability. That's the Casey aspect of Roe versus Wade, which is a 1994 case that expanded Roe versus Wade from the trimester framework to the viability. So up to the point of viability, it's a woman's decision. What's that?
Well, I wanted to ask it before I forgot it. What's the weeks on that viability?
So it's a case by case basis, but about 20 to 24 weeks in that window.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like 29 weeks is the average when babies are born, right? Am I wrong on that?
39 to 40 weeks is full gestation.
Okay. I'm off. So about halfway through. But at what point does the fetus / child start having activity, brain waves, muscle groups moving? Like, what point does that happen? That's where I could be like, okay, cut it off there.
Well, and what Rowan Casey did is at the point that the baby is no longer fully dependent on the resources of the mother, that's when the protection kicks into place, where there's where your ability to get it is limited to just those circumstances. And I think if you wanted to have an argument to set it back to 15 weeks or whatever, I think that's a debate that can be had. But I think at least in the baseline, we should all be able to agree that we want women who are pregnant to be able to bring a child into a stable environment that they feel strongly capable that they're able to provide the best life for that child. And there's a myriad of reasons why in that first 15, 20 weeks that a woman might come to the decision that it is not the best time. And I think we should just put that trust in the person and not let the government come in and say when and where it's okay, because they are going to screw it up.
Okay. But I think you'll agree with this. Harry might as well, but you're never the average American. I'm relating to average on this. You're never going to be financially ready for a child. Like one of my family members, they have 2 kids. They didn't want either of those kids. They didn't mean to have them, but they knew that they had to step up because they don't believe they're pro-life. They don't believe in abortion, but they knew they had to step up, and that's one of the greatest things that has happened to them. And they stepped up properly, and they're being good parents.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Like my ex-wife and I, we had my first kid when I was 22 years old, and that was due to a contraceptive failure. And we made that decision because that was what was best for us. And I think that every person should be empowered to do that without having the government coming in and saying, no, you can't do this. I guess that's my point. I don't have the trust in government to be able to effectively tell people when and where is the right time and place to raise a family and under what circumstances they're allowed to make those decisions for their health, safety, and well-being.
I think I can agree on that. This makes me sound like I'm leaning left, but
no. So that's it. Like I'm not a Democrat. Like I'm just somebody who tries to think pragmatically. So yeah. I look at this and honestly, like the closest, I'm like a small L libertarian, like government stay out of my life type person. I'm a public defender. I fight the government for a living. What I don't want is I don't think I want every woman to have the same rights no matter what state they're in. I don't want them to have to travel across state lines to get basic care. And I don't want the government locking women up because they made a decision that they felt was best for them or something that was medically necessary for them. And I think we can't trust the government to distinguish between those two.
I don't think it should be a crime. I think that that's too far. That's where I would kind of say, like, I think that that's too far. But, oh, shit, I forgot what I was going to say.
No worries.
I think it went back to the point of, I can't agree to a degree. Like I said, I'm trying to be open-minded. And I had a hard stance on abortion for a long, long while. I still don't agree with it unless it's one of those 3 cases. But like I'm open-minded enough to see you shouldn't have to travel. If it's needed, you should not have to travel across state lines. And Looney,
I'm with you. All of us are entitled to our own moral holdings, and we can vote for people who mimic those. But at the end of the day, any law that's passed is passed through threat of government force. whether they're going to arrest you, put you in jail, put you on probation, you are going to be under the threat of government force. And I think we need to set some really clear standards as to what that is. We can, there's a bunch of laws that are things that are legal that I disagree with. There's things that are illegal that I think should be legal. But at the end of the day, I don't want the government stepping in and making those in between those critical decisions. So Nurse Heather is here, and she's got a wealth of knowledge on this topic, and she actually has a uterus, so her voice is very important. I just speak from a policy standpoint. The health stuff can go to Nurse Heather by all means.
Okay.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, my thing isn't like lighting up saying that I'm live. So, so I'm a labor and delivery nurse and a woman. So this is my wheelhouse. And, there's a whole, like, these guys have done a very good job of explaining a lot of this stuff to you. Myself, personally, I do provide termination of pregnancies to what's considered basically sentience or known consciousness. You had actually asked this question earlier about how do we sort of make that determination, and it is done by EEGs on fetuses. So we can tell when, at what point in fetal development a baby has the ability to have a subjective human experience, when they can feel pleasure, when they can feel pain, and it's ethically wrong. So when we make when our scientists and our doctors, they get together and they make the recommendations for laws to be passed around things like this, they actually do it from an ethical standpoint, right? So the claim that women can terminate a pregnancy at 6, 7, 8, 9 months for maternal choice is completely false. She can't, because ethically it's wrong. That baby is considered valuable enough to not end its life without good reason. And at that point, the only reason that we would do that at 24 weeks, the only reason that we would terminate a pregnancy is for the life of the mother and if the baby's already dead. So not even in the other things. So for the grape, for the incest, those have to be done beforehand. And they usually are. Like the vast majority of terminations of pregnancies are done prior to 12 weeks. So, and that's good, right? We want that. The baby at that point in time, it can't experience pain. It doesn't know what's happening. It's not developed enough. So we don't place value on it in the medical community. And this is informed by ethics and then reinforced in our laws that allow our doctors to make these judgment calls on whether or not this individual should be able to access this care. And you can try. I've heard this argument before where someone at 30 weeks will go into Planned Parenthood and ask to terminate their pregnancy. They just don't want to be pregnant anymore at 30 weeks. The doctor will say no. I don't know of any doctor or any nurse, myself included, that would ever do that.
Okay.
We don't do it.
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. If you have questions for me, one thing that I did, kind of for all the guys in the room here, I've heard this term. I just want to correct you on a term. In the case of Amber Thurman, when they're saying that she took the abortion pill and she had, you say, fetal matter left over. The correct terminology is actually products of conception. It's actually usually not the embryo at that point. It's usually the sac and or placenta. So it's products of conception. Just, sorry, but it bugs me when I hear fetal matter because it kind of sounds like the baby has broken into pieces and is falling apart, and that's gross. So yeah, product of conception.
Did I say that?
No, you didn't, but Chris did. And I think Harry's probably said it too. So yeah. Just
yeah, I think honestly, I'll agree with you. I can come to a comfortable moral spot on those points of the after like that 24 weeks when it is basically not fully developed, but like it can feel things. I can come to an agreement on that to where I could agree with that. But then I could also go back with the argument and say that when your baby is born, you still have to do everything for it. So at least in your opinion, what is the difference between when the baby or fetus starts having brainwaves and actual like signs of living life versus the baby coming directly out of the womb and you literally have to do everything for it, just like you had to do when you were pregnant with it inside of you? What would be the difference on that? That's where my argument is like, I don't really see a difference on that. And that's why I feel like I stand where I do.
And honestly, you're not completely wrong. So I'll answer that. Just one quick statement. Someone in the comments said that I'm Canadian. This is true. I wrote my NCLEX exam in 2015, which was the first year that Canadian and American trained nurses wrote the same exam. So I have the exact same training as American trained nurses, and I can work in the States as easily as I can work in Canada. Obviously, as a labor and delivery nurse, the laws removal of Roe v. Wade were very similar to the Canadian federal protections that we have here. So in those states that have protected those laws, I would be able to practice. In the states where there are abortion bans or heartbeat bills or whatever, just like the doctors are moving away from those states, I would not practice in those states. My license would be on the line. So, and women can't access care. Like I had this conversation with Chris a couple of nights ago or last week about how they changed mifepristone and misoprostol to Schedule 4 drugs, and they have to be locked away now. Misoprostol we keep in the drawer beside the patient bed because it's the first drug we use if a woman bleeds after she has a baby. Anytime, like full term baby, she bleeds, we can get that drug into her in 10 seconds. So like that's the kind of thing that these laws are kind of allowing to happen, and that's bad. Okay, to answer your question. So like we place a value on the baby while it's inside, but we do have to choose which life is more valuable. And the way that the laws go now...
I know you're going to say the mom. I would say the mothers too, because you can always make another baby, but you can't have that same mother.
Yeah, so
I agree with that point completely.
Yeah, so it is the mother, and that is true until the second the baby is born, and thankfully, this doesn't happen that often. Usually, what will happen if the baby is viable and we have to deliver the baby for the sake of the mom's life, everything is done to keep that baby living, and it's quite successful now. Like our medical advances are at a point where if you have a baby at 24 weeks or beyond, it's probably going to do well. Like it might have some complications, but it'll live. Like it'll make it, and that's great. So like we have that option to preserve the life of both. It's not often that we have to say, you know what, the baby is just going to die. Like we have to save the mom. And I did have, I can't remember where I talked about this recently. I don't think it was in one of these lives. It was a different pro-life live where the individual that I was talking to was telling me that they felt that the life of the baby and the life of the mother were equally valuable. And so I asked, of course, well, what if you have to choose? If you have to, it has to be one or the other. And they wouldn't give me an answer. Instead, they said neither. They would want them both to die. And in this case, they actually quoted the case with Amber Thurman because she died because she killed her baby. So because she had chosen to kill her baby, her life was no longer valuable. So to me, that's like two wrongs don't make a right kind of a situation.
Yeah.
But I have seen exactly one case where it was really it was really down to the wire. We were really pushing whether or not we were going to have to choose if we could save this baby or not. And the situation was, it was an emergency cesarean section, and we had to put the mother under a general anesthetic because we needed to get the baby out fast. It was not doing well. The problem was, when you go under a general anesthetic, the anesthetic goes to the baby as well. So as long as the mother isn't breathing, neither is the baby. And the anesthesiologist could not get an airway into the mother. And she ended up calling a code blue on the mom. But because the mom wasn't stable, the obstetrician could not do the C-section. And so we're all staring at the clock with the full team ready to resuscitate the mom and the baby. And thankfully, we were able to get the airway on the mom, and the anesthesiologist, even though the mom wasn't fully stable, allowed the obstetrician to go ahead and deliver the baby. And the baby needed resuscitation extensively, but they did both survive. And so that's as close as it's ever come to, for myself personally, experiencing this kind of situation. But they do have to have a stable mom first.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a question. You might have already covered it. I might have missed it or just forgotten it. Have you ever had a scenario where, I'm sure you have, but a scenario where the mother, whether, pro-choice, pro-life, whatever, where the mother was told, like, not that she's going to die, but there was a high chance of her dying, of having the baby? What would you say your averages on which ones go directly for terminating the pregnancy and which ones want to try and have the child? I'm just kind of curious on that.
I don't think it's just not really presented that way anymore because of this. Now we have this overlap, right? Where our healthcare has gotten so good that technically viability is 20 weeks. I think there's only one baby that's survived that young, but I know that at 24 weeks, the survival chances go quite high. And usually these complications will arise after 20 weeks. So it's always like you're kind of playing Russian roulette. And I have had a case where we had a mom. She was super, super, super high risk, and she was living in the hospital on our unit. And she was getting, the baby was getting checked on every day, twice a day, for weeks and weeks on end, right? And every day reevaluating, okay, is today the day to deliver the baby? Let's wait one more day. Is today the day to deliver the baby? Wait one more day. So you're always reevaluating those costs and benefits of those decisions. And usually it comes to a point of probabilities. So it's never cut and dry. Eventually it'll get to the point of, if we don't get the baby out now, you will die. Eventually we get there. But that's the kind of thing that happens when you restrict abortion rights, right? Like in the case of Amber Thurman, she wouldn't have had to die without that abortion ban. It's a simple procedure. Her life would never have been in danger, right? So we intervene way before we get to that point. So usually if the baby is younger than 20 weeks and the probability of the mom not surviving the pregnancy is high, she will be convinced, usually through evidence and probabilities and statistics and learning her baby is not yet sentient and whatever, to terminate.
Guys,
Sorry, jump in.
I was just going to say that I have to wrap up the live now. I apologize. I'm running on 3.5 hours of sleep. I haven't eaten all day. We just got food, and then I'm going to pass out. So I apologize, guys.
All good. Pleasure being on here.
But
Here, would you allow me, Looney, to ask Looney one question before we go?
yeah, go for it.
So, Looney, wouldn't you rather have people like Nurse Heather be responsible for making those decisions without worrying about whether she was going to be sued or lose her license or thrown in jail?
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Right now, I would say, yeah, probably.
All right. That's all. That's all I had. Thank you very much, Looney, and thank you, Harry. Enjoy your food.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. And I want to address one thing. Everybody in the chat is saying that I'm a liberal and that the debates are boring. I'm definitely not liberal. I'd say right now I'm more kind of like an independent leaning, but I'm also trying to keep an open mind because closed-minded people tend to be the dumbest. So.
Yeah, I think that you just you need to be informed. You know, we do make these decisions based on ethics, and you know, we're not cold-hearted. I hear all the time from pro-lifers they wouldn't want me to be their nurse, which is absolutely ridiculous because I'm actually quite conservative in my views as far as terminating pregnancies go in as a labor and delivery nurse. So it's, you know. Yeah, like leave those decisions in our hands, and the government should stay out of the delivery room.
I can, yeah, I'll agree with that. That 24 week, I can agree with that. In like my moral side, still thinking about 12 weeks would be pushing it, but.
And that's totally fine. And like Law said, like you would have that discussion with a sexual partner around those values. And I'll tell you something that will surprise a lot of people. For myself, for my own body, I'm pro-life. I would not choose to terminate my own pregnancy if I got pregnant, which I can't anymore, thankfully. So, but I'm a, you know, staunch pro-choice advocate for other women, all women, my own daughter. Like, I give the drugs, I help with the abortions, I do all of that. But for my own body, my actual personal choice is life.
Okay, I haven't not heard something like that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm the same way.
Is right.
Yeah.
It's like letting you choose for yourself.
Right. And Looney, if the decision was put to me, if a woman who was my partner, came to me, you know, and it's like, hey, I don't think I can do this. What do you think? My natural bend would also be towards preserving that life. I don't care if I have to work extra hours, if I have to take a second or third job, I will do whatever it takes. But I'm never going to try to push that onto somebody else. I might advocate, for helping women who are in those situations to make sure they have the resources they have. But I just don't think we should ever put the force of government behind that decision. That citizens should be able to be free. Dang it, Harry, can you come back so we can end the live? Anyway.
I'm here.
All right.
Yeah, follow me. I'm trying to build a flat platform of my own. I've only been on TikTok for like a couple of weeks here. So
follow Heather.
I got you, Heather. You're lovely, and I really enjoyed listening to you.
I'm going to follow her too. I follow Nurse Heather, and if I did it, you should do it too. And Law did it as well. We all love Law of the Wild, right? His endorsement is important.
Law of the Wild is amazing. My favorite.
Oh wow.
My don't mean nothing, but I give you a follow, Heather. That was a good convo. It was productive, and yeah, I think I will say I would probably lean after this. I'll probably lean more towards Kamala on the abortion side.
Yeah,
there we go.
But
I mean,
one pin down.
There's just something. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I would rather have neither. But there's certain things that I agree with on both sides.
Right.
Yeah, fair.
All right, guys.
We can leave it at that.
Thanks, Harry, for bringing me up.
Yeah, Nurse Heather, come back anytime.
Appreciate
right?
it. I'm always around.
Amazing.
Well, I look
forward
to guys.
Yeah, likewise, man. I appreciate it. Have a good one. All right.
No problem. I'll be back.
Thanks, man. Sounds good, man. I like it. All right. Hold on, I have some people to thank. Daniel, thank you for the $6. As a parent with kids in the U.S. schools, thank you for continuing to speak up about this. Absolutely, it's an important issue. Annie, thank you for the $25. I wish you could debate my dad. Your policy knowledge and reference to facts are outstanding. You're making this world a better place. I appreciate you so much, Annie. Thank you for that support. Raul, thank you for the $5. MAGA falls when you vote Kamala and Walls. Get that on a t-shirt. Hell fuck. I won't swear. Hell yeah. Alyssa, thank you for the $10. Loved your video from St. Augustine, Florida, where I'm from, and huge Kamala fan. Had I known, I would have been down there myself. So amazing so amazing seeing from your platform. Thank you. Well, thank you, Alyssa, for being here. And turn Florida blue for us, please. Tanner, thank you for the $2.53, my man. I want to ask you a favor when you're wrapping up the stream. Could you rate my boy Pickles GG? We got 600 viewers and we're huge fans. Honestly, like is your live like political? I think that's what it has to come down to. Like most people want to see like debates, so I don't know. Like, I just want to make sure it makes sense, right? Marilyn, thank you for the $5 as well, saying it's Mayor Kamala. I appreciate you being here. Essence, thank you for the $6. Come to PA, change minds. There's Trump training. I should do that. I would happily do that. Aiden, thank you for the $5. You changed my friends to vote blue. Wow. Aiden, I'm so glad to. Thank you for I love when people tell me that. Thank you, man. Stephanie, thank you for the $1. And Vicky, thank you for the $10. I'm from North Carolina. Welcome. I'm proud all of you do. Thank you so much, Vicky. I appreciate that. Listen, ladies, gents, boys and girls, everybody in between. First and foremost, follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, Twitter. All of those links are in my bio. We love pickles. Oh, people like pickles. Okay, pickles is great. Then if people say that he's good, I agree. I'll trust your guys' word. But also, we're going to be doing some in-person debates tomorrow in North Carolina, and I'm going to be announcing the location tomorrow, so that if you're in the area, maybe come and debate. I don't know. As long as you're good faith, we'll have a good conversation. So keep an eye out for that on Instagram, on Snapchat, and then of course TikTok as well, and of course YouTube and Twitter, all that good stuff. So all those links are in my bio. Make sure to go follow. Anyway, go rate all these people. We have Tommy, Carbon, Isaiah. They're all TikTok live right now. Pickles is also live. So what time? I'm not 100% sure yet on time yet, but we'll get back to you on that. So go rate all these people. They're great. Go let them know that we sent you. My underscore dude, Carbon. All of these people are great people. I'd highly recommend you go watch their lives. They're doing some good work. And then if you go to their lives, rate it with Harry sent you, like Harry rate. Let them know. And yeah. All right, everybody. I'm gonna go eat and get some sleep, man. I'm tired.